Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, I have received communication from Mr. Barry Padarath, MP, member for Princestown, who has requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions. Papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I have the honor to lay paper number 1, the consolidated financial statements of National Flour Mills Limited for the financial year ended December 31st, 2018. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that paper number 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Reports from committees.
Member for Caroni Central.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to present the following reports. The 22nd report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial years 2010 to 2016. Secondly, the 24th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial years 2008 to 2011.
Prime Minister's questions. Urgent questions. Questions on notice. Questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are 2 questions and we'll be answering both.
Member for Oropuch West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question number 237 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the following is the answer provided by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which quite frankly I'm not surprised. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service has no data to support the statement that there is an increase of heinous crimes perpetrated by minors. In fact, the records indicate that over the period 2014 to 2018, the number of serious crimes committed by persons under the age of 17 years has fluctuated. Notwithstanding this, as part of its mandate, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service endeavors to reduce the number of minors involved in criminal activity through the following initiatives. 1, the Organized Crime and Intelligence Unit, a combined suppression methods, the enterprise model, comprising sustained surveillance, visits to emerging gang members, increased patrols, arrests, prosecution, more zealous investigations, and intelligence gathering, as well as crime prevention and community relation activities. B, visits to schools, communities, PTA meetings, police caravans in at-risk areas to lecture about bullying. 2, the Child Protection Unit embarked on the following preventative measures. A, joint outreach programs with the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, Office of the Prime Minister, Gender Affairs Division, Tobago House of Assembly. The team hosts interactive sessions throughout the country targeting young persons in schools who are in crisis, religious organizations, and youth organizations. And B, participated, this is the Child Protection Unit, participated in a youth symposium for over 800 students in June 2019. C, participated in a child protection fair with over 500 children in May 2019. And D, the Commissioner of Police's Cup football competition provides alternative activities for the youth of Trinidad and Tobago. Furthermore, the Ministry of National Security continues to target the youth at risk with the Civilian Conservation Corps program and the military-led academic training program, of which there's a graduation ceremony tomorrow. There was a CCC graduation ceremony earlier this week, and also through the use of police youth clubs, as well as the cadet force. Also, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force has begun having camps for some of these at-risk youth.
Supplemental member for Urupuch West.
Yeah. Honorable Minister, you said that some measures with the Conservation Corps dealing with the minors. Do you think there's a correlation between less money allocated to this Conservation Corps and some activity untoward that these minors are getting involved in?
I will not allow that as a supplemental question. Member for Urupuch West.
You also said there is something called zealous investigation. Could you elucidate what is that in investigation? What is zealous investigation?
Minister of National Security.
An investigation carried forward with a lot of thrust and zeal.
Sorry.
Member for Shagona East.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Question 241 to the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam Speaker, it is well known that across various administrations, there has been a significant backlog of applications for state land lease renewal for the grant of new leases on the basis of regularization of occupation and cultivation upon state lands, and hundreds of applications for the grant of leases for the purpose of cultivating state lands. Madam Speaker, the present government has made regularization of state land tenure issues a priority for the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Madam Speaker, across the country, applicants who have waited up to 60 years have been receiving their approvals under this PNM government. The rate of issuance of approvals for state land leases for agriculture has increased exponentially under this government compared to previous years. Madam Speaker, each application requires varying types of work: site inspections, surveys or resurveys, probate and letters of administration processes, internal family and beneficiary consent, statutory declarations, and other administrative and legal processes. In that context, it is impossible to say with certainty or even estimate the expected date by which farmers on state land can expect renewals. It is an ongoing process, Madam Speaker, with applications being approved by the Cabinet weekly. I thank you.
Supplemental member for Shagona East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the Honourable Minister indicate how many farmers we are talking about in this backlog?
Hundreds.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam Speaker, I would estimate that there are about 20,000 persons in this country requiring action on their agricultural state land leases.
Member for Urupuch West.
Mr. To renew leases, the Commissioner of State Lands have to be involved. Right now, the question should be, is the Commissioner of State Lands actively involved in renewing these leases? Because my information, there are over 400 leases sitting on her desk.
So the question is?
Is she actively involved in renewing those leases?
Thank you very much. Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam Speaker, I'm very grateful for that information, and that goes to show exactly the volume that this PNM government has been dealing with. And I'm sure if I'm allowed to leave here, I would be able to go up to that office and ensure that those files reach the cabinet next week, Thursday, if not before. Thank you.
Supplemental member for Oropouche West.
But those files have been sitting for the last
Question.
year. Did you get any cabinet meeting or to bring those files so you can have a cabinet session so those things can be renewed?
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam Speaker, yesterday the cabinet approved 45 applications, so that I'm telling my colleagues in advance, we should expect 400 next week Thursday.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers. Personal explanations.
I seek your leave to make a personal statement, personal explanation. Madam Speaker, pursuant to the adoption of a report from the Privileges Committee on the matter of the use of...
1 minute, member. I think first he'll ask leave to make it. I must note that I didn't get any notice before now.
Sure.
I didn't get any notice before now with respect to this intention, okay? But you will have to seek leave and for leave to be granted.
I did receive a letter dated June 26 indicating the outcome of the resolution, but the letter did not state any other requirement. Pursuant to 23 of the standing order, with the leave of the Speaker, so as I stood, I sought leave to do it.
All right,
but I had no other direction.
All right, okay, thank you. So what I will ask is that we stand this for later, down in the proceedings, that a copy could be made available to the Speaker, and then we will take it. So maybe the whip and the leader of the House can agree at what stage we'll take your personal explanation.
Speaker, again, just for clarification, I do have some notes, rough notes. Is it that what is required is a typewritten product to your good office? If that is fine, thank you.
I really would much prefer a typed explanation rather than your rough notes.
Understood.
I might read things into your rough notes that you didn't intend. Okay, so that what I would ask is that the whip and the leader discuss and advise the clerk at what stage we'll take the personal explanation with leave being granted to the member for Oropouche East.
Introduction of bills. Motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister. Public business, private members' business, motions.
Member for Caroni East.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas over the past 3 years, there has been a collapse of the public health sector, with a significant increase in morbidity, mortality, and preventable deaths in major health institutions. And whereas the collapse of our primary healthcare system and widespread suffering from chronic non-communicable diseases have resulted from the absence of public education programs, reduction in the opening hours at health centers, and the unavailability of many CDAP drugs. And whereas at major hospitals there exist overcrowding at emergency departments, with patients dying on trolleys and the unavailability of beds, basic pharmaceutical supplies, reagents for lab testing, first-line chemotherapy, anti-cancer drugs, and the surgical medical supplies. And whereas the waiting time for surgery is highly unacceptable, and there is non-functional diagnostic equipment, and whereas hundreds of nationals were denied employment as nurses and doctors despite severe shortages of medical personnel, while hundreds of foreign doctors were employed. And whereas the closure of the central block of the Port of Spain General Hospital, the underutilization of the Couva Hospital, and the discontinued construction of the National Oncology Center have deprived patients of health care and have led to a major crisis in the delivery of medical care, be it resolved that this House condemn the government for its mismanagement of the health sector and call for the implementation of remedial measures, policies, and programs. Madam Speaker, may I seek your kind indulgence in permitting me, on behalf of all the members of the opposition, and I'm sure the Leader of the Opposition and all members of the House, to sincerely congratulate all 18,000 plus students who wrote the recent SEA exam, their parents, teachers, guardians, and all those who contributed to the education, and to the first 3 students, Siri Vadlamudi of Grant Memorial Presbyterian, second place Megan Ramuta of San Fernando TML Primary, and third, the top scoring boy, Manasseh Mohammed of Canaan Presbyterian, all from South Trinidad. Yes. In addition, the Tobago student who placed first, 12-year-old Sebastian Rampasad from Boko Government Primary. Madam Speaker, that's the reason why the PP government wanted to have the UWI South Campus as a center of excellence in education in South Trinidad. So, member, I've allowed you a certain amount of indulgence, and therefore, if you will proceed with your motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm moving on now. Madam Speaker, health, like education, is a cornerstone and fundamental developmental pillar of any civilized society. A right to life of any citizen is a constitutionally enshrined and entrenched right and declaration under Section 4A and D of the Constitution, a right of the individual to equality of treatment from any public authority, and citizens must be afforded the opportunity for high quality of health care. Madam Speaker, this present administration, this government, has presided over the last 4 years over the near devastation of the public healthcare system, with deepening crises at virtually all hospitals and other institutions. Daily, the lives of patients who depend on the services of the state health sector are endangered. The health sector has become a disaster area under this government. Madam Speaker, in the major hospitals, daily horror scenes abound of emergency departments overflowing with patients on wheelchairs and trolleys, waiting for days to obtain critical medical treatment, with many dying on trolleys. And all of us can attest to some family or friend being in the emergency departments on trolleys for sometimes 2 to 3 days, which I'm speaking about. If you lie on your bed for 8 hours, beyond that is extremely uncomfortable. To lie on a trolley for 3 days, unable to move because the trolleys have bars at both sides, unable to be cleaned properly, unable to have the privacy that is required, it is something that is abominable, Madam Speaker. These patients stay on the trolleys, unable to be admitted to the wards, all because of serious incompetence and mismanagement of the health sector under this present administration. Madam Speaker, along with other MPs of the opposition, UNC, I have consistently raised these issues and virtually pleaded with the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Health to take decisive and urgent action to improve the health sector. Instead of seeking to address and rectify the numerous issues in the health sector, the Minister of Health at different occasions engaged in wild distortions and outright cover-ups of the crucial feelings to the detriment of the citizens of this country
Madam Speaker, Standing Order 48-6, please.
Member for Caroni East, I uphold the standing order, I uphold the objection. I'll ask you with respect to that last description that you stated otherwise, completely withdraw it and state it, you can state it otherwise.
Withdraw and move on, Madam Speaker.
Yeah.
Some of these patients who have actually died. What has occurred amounts to serious violations of citizens' fundamental and constitutionally guaranteed rights to proper health care and a decent quality of life. Madam Speaker, just recently on Sunday, 7th of May, over 2 years ago, Sunday, 7th of May, 2017, one of the leading newspapers, Sunday Express, "Healthcare System is in Crisis," written by Anna Ramdas. And I quote, "Trinidad and Tobago healthcare system is clearly in crisis." This is not a member of Caroni East is saying that. This is not the opposition is saying that. But it is a national issue. Billions are being spent and have not addressed fundamental problems which are plaguing the country's hospital and health centers for a while. The 2017 national budget allocated the third highest amount to healthcare, $6.25 billion. And there are still too few public hospital beds, too many patients waiting years for life-saving surgeries, too many shortcomings in maintenance of vital equipment, such as the recent fiasco with the CT computerized tomography scanners. The horrendously long time patients have to wait for healthcare, and the list goes on. Urgently needed medications run short, while patients wait for long lines for prescriptions to be filled. Infant mortality remains a challenge, while a brand new children's hospital lies dormant and unoccupied. So what went wrong? And why can't the public health system be fixed? And these are questions we have to ask the present administration. What has gone wrong over the close to nearly 4 years? Why can't the health system be fixed, Madam Speaker? I spoke about the overcrowding and patients lying on trolleys. And there's another article recently written, Wednesday, 4th of April, 2018. Patients in the corridor is normal. That is what a Southwest Regional Health Authority chief executive said. It is normal for patients to be placed on beds along the corridors at San Fernando General Hospital waiting for treatment, says Southwest Regional Health Authority Chief Executive Officer. I wouldn't need to call her name. Photos circulating on social media this week showed several patients at San Fernando General Hospital placed on beds inside the building, lined along the corridors. Madam Speaker, this is totally unacceptable for any developed country, and any country that has spent, and for a government that has spent close to $21,634,423,000 in the 4 years from 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, as compared to the 5 years from the People's Partnership Administration of $21,730,000. So in 4 years, this present administration has spent $216 billion on health care. And in our 5 years of the People's Partnership Administration, we spent $217 billion. And later on, I'll be able to show what we were able to do with the $217 billion, as opposed to the $216 billion which this present administration has spent and have under their wings. And I go on to show where in the Southwest Regional Health Authority, all accident and emergency departments were overcrowded. The Southwest Regional Health Authority has admitted overcrowded is the main challenge at its 5 emergency departments. Why has this have to happen when you have major hospitals, you had Port of Spain Hospital, you have Mount Hope, you have San Fernando General Hospital, and you have an unopened Couva Children's Hospital, which could have taken the burden away from these three major hospitals, and so that the overcrowding that was taking place in San Fernando and Mount Hope could have been taken care of if the Children's Hospital was open, Madam Speaker. One of their friends, the government administration, who has been a supporter, and a colleague of mine, a classmate as well, we graduated in 1974, Dr. Anand Chattergoon, and a newspaper article on Wednesday, 23rd January 2019, written by Yvonne Webb. Anand says, the service at the San Fernando General Hospital, where he served as medical director, in inverted commas, stinks. It's unpleasant for me to use that word, but that's what he said. He said overcrowding in the emergency department is bad, and chastised all the heads of departments for being able to get a handle on the situation. And he expresses disappointment in the overcrowding. And he said the situation has got progressively worse under their watch. And my colleague, and my gynecologic colleague as well, and younger colleague in Parliament, the member for Faizabad, lamented a shutdown of the Petrotrin Hospital as well on Tuesday, November 25th, 2018, a burden on the public health. So here it is, we have overcrowded hospitals already, people lining up on trolleys, unable to get beds in the wards. They come and they shut down the Petrotrin Hospital, which took care of a certain amount of patients, and that exacerbated the problem of overcrowding in these three other areas. Madam Speaker, on the 23rd of July 2017, Sunday, in the Express, spike in patient shows up, hospital bed shortage by Michel Loubon. Lack of beds at major hospital continues to be a sore point and was exacerbated this week by a spike in patients seeking care. And the Chief Executive Officer of the NWRHA said it led to ambulances being redirected to Eric Williams Medical Complex, where beds were also in short supply. So what is happening in this country over the last 4 years, or what has been happening? Overcrowding in the accident and emergency, scarcity of beds, patients are suffering, patients are dying as a result of complications on trolleys, they're unable to get the medication while they're there, they're unable to be tested properly, and inevitably patients die. I had 2 patients of mine whose relatives were at Port of Spain Hospital over the last 3 or 4 months since the closure of the central block. And despite me speaking to one of the senior doctors there, they couldn't get a bed for 3 days. And the patient stayed there, got a deep vein thrombosis, and died as a result of the deep vein thrombosis causing pulmonary embolism, Madam Speaker. This is unacceptable and cannot. When patients die like that, it pains you. It pains me. My whole life I've been dedicated to medicine. Forget the politics. The politics is by the wayside. I spent 20 years, and I don't know why I was here in the first place. Yeah, why I was here. 19 and 6, 25 years. Madam Speaker, 45 years I'm a doctor today, around this time. 45 years. And I'm a cancer specialist since 1988, 12 and 1931 years. And a gynecologist for how much? 80 to now is how much? 39 years. And of course, my whole life has been attending to patients. In Trinidad, I have a private population of patients of 31,000 private patients, Madam Speaker. And I've seen over 120,000 patients around the world. Around the world. And I've trained and been educated and saw patients in 18 hospitals around the world. So I speak with authority when I speak on medicine, Madam Speaker. And it pains me as a doctor. It pains me to be able to and I have attended to the wide cross-section of Trinidad and Tobago and even the Caribbean. Patients from St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Nevis, Barbados came to see me while I was in the medical practice of dealing with cancer patients. So, Madam Speaker, it is our responsibility as well as an opposition to work with the government, to work with those who are providing health care. We can give our help. The Prime Minister at one time said he needed the help of the member for Sawa Barataria and the member for Faizabad to help him after the Welsh report came out. We are willing to help because healthcare is for all of us, and we don't want to see any of our colleagues on the other side suffering, or they don't want to see us suffering. We have to help each other. We have to help the population. We have to help the country. So when I say these things and they hurt, it is because it could be anybody. We don't wish ill care or bad health for any one of our colleagues. So, Madam Speaker, what I'm speaking about is the reality. And I hope the minister doesn't take it personally, because this is not personal against him or the government. But we have to lay the facts on the table. Yeah. Hospitals at crisis point. Sunday Guardian by Joel Julian on July 17, 2016. Institutions have less than half of staff needed. There is a horrendous shortage of staff, especially skilled medical staff, including both doctors and nurses, at the public health institutions in this country. The Sunday Guardian has learned. The issue has reached crisis proportions throughout the country, resulting in a ratio as high as 22 patients to 1 nurse currently existing at the San Fernando Hospital, as opposed to a ratio of 6 patients to 1 nurse suggested by the World Health Organization. The situation at San Fernando General, according to nursing staff there, has resulted in long hours, excessive overtime, tired workers, denial of legitimate leave, and this will negatively impact the quality of health care to the population. This is unsafe and puts both nurse and patient at risk. The staff shortages are amongst the list of growing concerns currently plaguing the public health sector. Among the other issues are drug shortages at the RHAs, medical staff from Tobago staging a sick out over areas and confusion. No jobs for doctors, and even as a shortage of specialists exists, more than 150 nationals who have already completed their internship as doctors at the public hospital still remain unemployed. So, Madam Speaker, what is the management style of the present administration and the Honourable Minister of Health with his team? Why all of this has to be occurring when you have spent $21 billion already on health care? So, Minister, you may have to answer to some of these. And we will put it down as mismanagement. Mismanagement. Because I know you deliberately would not want to allow these things to happen. But you have 4 regional health authorities, you have boards, you have CEOs in Trinidad and 1 in Tobago. What are they doing? What is the CEO doing? When in the People's Partnership Administration, Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, after 2.5 years, realized that the health issue was becoming a major issue and was overtaking crime as a #1 problem. She called a meeting together, a cabinet meeting, and said, what can we do about health care? Because we need to do something now. And ideas began to flow. And to assist the Minister of Health at that time, she decided to appoint a team that will assist the Minister of Health in things like the whole management and the day-to-day issues related to the health center, to the healthcare system. So what has this government done? Patients became unhappy with uncaring staff, and the media reports on this, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, there has been collapse of the primary healthcare system. We had opened 65, we have 105 primary health centers in the country, 9 hospitals, and 9 district health facilities which are open 24 hours a day. That is from the public sector. We have about 10 major private healthcare institutions throughout Port of Spain, the East, and Central and South. The government provides healthcare at the major public health institutions. So out of these 105 health centers, the Honorable Prime Minister at that time said, we need to open up these healthcare centers to 9 in the evening and on weekends and public holidays, and staff it with a competent doctor, competent nurse, a pharmacist, and security services and a clerk. That would cost $3,000 per day maximum. 7 days is $21,000. Madam Speaker, it will cost this government only about $30 million per year to bring this service back, to open these health centers up to 9 o'clock in the evening and on weekends and public holidays. You know why that is important? Because the chronic non-communicable diseases of diabetes, hypertension, and cancer, patients can walk in after their work to get themselves assessed. They can check their diabetic control, they can check their hypertensive control, and they can go for screening, adequate screening at these 65 health centers. As we are today, there are probably only about 5 open up to 9 o'clock in the evening. Why can't it be done? Why are you forsaking the responsibility of not having these health centers open? What are you depriving the patients for? You spend $21 billion and you cannot open 65 health centers up to 9 o'clock in the evening, providing the drugs for them, controlling all the medical illnesses. Madam Speaker, and what about the communicable diseases now, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, when the Zika virus came on in 2016, from our side, we advocated that the Prime Minister himself must become involved in the entire campaign in a vigorous mobilization exercise to avert an outbreak of the deadly Zika virus. The national emergency issued by the health minister at that time, we indicated to him that he must include a resolute and urgent public health exercise and a vigorous education campaign. Timely, united, and deliberate activities and strong government leadership are required in the midst of this international health catastrophe. Madam Speaker, our advice our advice at that time were ignored. And the Zika virus, which was in the United States declared as an explosive pandemic potential, became endemic within the Caribbean. And Brazil had 1.5 million people being affected or infected. And Barbados, Venezuela, and Suriname were reporting confirmed or likely cases, and the virus had exploded in Colombia. And we raised those issues right in Parliament. The minister promised that he will do something for the eradication of all these mosquitoes and so on. But the Zika virus came on, pregnant women became infected with the virus, but up to this time, we haven't any idea as to how many patients were affected with the Zika, pregnant patients with the Zika virus, and how many patients or little ones have suffered from the microcephaly, which is as a consequence of the Zika virus. So, Madam Speaker, perhaps the minister can tell us something about this. So, consequently, this administration, and in particular Minister of Health, you stand accused of serious dereliction of duty to the public you serve, due to the deliberate withholding of information that could have saved the lives of many citizens and prevented many from contracting a serious or life-threatening disease. Madam Speaker, then there's the issue of the measles threat that is coming back to Trinidad now from Venezuela.
Standing order 48-6, please.
Again, member.
Okay, withdrawn.
Yes, and
Yeah.
as I say, with your experience
Yeah.
You just
I
set
don't
out
need
a
to go.
sterling CV on both sides. So I think you can find a much better way to express your.
Appreciate your guidance, Madam Speaker, and I don't need to really go into that, but you all know what you're doing. Yes, everybody knows. Yeah.
They know.
Yes, I withdraw.
You withdraw.
Yeah.
And you also withdraw all those other.
Negative issues.
Not negative. Not negative. The question is not about negative. It's the actual statements which have an improper motive. So those other things you said there, you know them. So just withdraw them and, as you say, press on smart.
Withdrawn, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much. Dr. Hospitales recently spoke about getting serious about eradicating mosquitoes, and he put it in this language, and I hope the Minister of Health begins to take the warning. And Trinidad-based CAFA, which is Caribbean Public Health Agency.
I'm looking at the text, and I want to caution on Standing Order 48.1, okay? Because your motion, while it touches many things, is very specific about certain areas of the health sector. So that I see you're going on to eradicating Zika and mosquitoes and all of that. And I just caution you with respect to Standing Order 48.1.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm on the area of the second limb of the motion, which is the collapse of our primary healthcare system and widespread suffering from chronic non-communicable diseases that have resulted from the absence of public education programs. So here am I speaking about the public education.
I would have thought mosquitoes and mosquito-borne diseases.
Yes, that's a public education.
And I'm not a doctor. Didn't come within the meaning of chronic non-communicable diseases.
Yeah.
So that's, members, that's why I stood up and cautioned you, because I think I do follow the text of your motion. All right? So please be
I
guided.
think the information is already given, and they will get the understanding of what they need to do in terms of these areas. Madam Speaker, the public healthcare system which I'm speaking about, the Minister said is overburdened. Why is it overburdened? It's because of the lack of programs at a national level to educate the population as what are their responsibilities. You will speak about you having a program, but your program is ineffective. You should be bombarding the television and the radio stations and a number of stations across the country and telling people that you must come for your annual screening on so and so. You must do your mammogram and provide the facilities across the country where these things could be done. You must tell them and educate them on the issues of reduction of food that will create obesity, control their diabetes and hypertension, and so on. And you yourself indicated that diabetes and hypertension and cancer costing about $8.7 billion annually. And while you were saying that, one of my colleagues, Professor Nyan Singh, is sounding out warnings throughout the country, diabetes taking toll on Trinidad and Tobago, and speaking about the near 500 amputations annually secondary to diabetes, Madam Speaker. So there is need for a lot of work to be done in terms of public education programs and bringing the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago aware of what can happen to them. Today we have 29 and 30-year young men and young men in their 30s as well dying of heart attacks because they are not aware of the consequences of cigarette smoking, obesity, and diabetes together, which is a recipe for disaster and a recipe for heart attacks and deaths. So we have to avoid that. And so when the Diabetic Association speak about rising obesity among students, that is something that you have to take into consideration and do it immediately. Educate the population. And the doctor said Trini is getting fatter. That is public health education. Caribbean recording high levels of cervical cancer deaths. Madam Speaker, the minister came here one day in Parliament and pounded the chairs and the desk and so on, his colleagues, say we did 400 pap smears within a week. Madam Speaker, we have 650,000 women approximately in Trinidad and Tobago. About 49.5% women, 50.5% men out of the 1.3 population or 1.4. Eliminating all those under 18 years of age and taking from those from 19 to 65, we have close to about 450,000 women in reproductive age and in menopausal age and postmenopausal age. All these women need pap smears, whether you do it annually for 3 years and then every 3 years. But what centers are they going to get it in Trinidad and Tobago? You have 105 health centers, you have 9 district health facilities, you have 9 hospitals. Set up a system so that they can get themselves tested there in these areas. Put the necessary equipment and the staff to do these. You know, it's only 6% of the population who have annual pap smears, and the 6% are the same 6% that go from year to year. So we have a morbidity of about 150 patients dying with cervical cancer in today's day and age. That is highly unacceptable. If you have to take caravans and take it through the country and call out the people to have their pap smears and have mammogram machines in some of these areas as well, in these centers, you'll be saving a lot of patients dying from cervical cancer and from breast cancer. And for the men, do the blood test for prostate. So it needs management skills, Madam Speaker, which is devoid on the other side. They do not have that competence and the level of ability to set up those systems to do it. And if they need our help, we are ready. We are ready on this side. And one of my colleagues, who I had the privilege of training, Dr. Vanessa Harry, who is a gynae oncologist. We have about 4 in Trinidad now. And we have about 7 of us within the Caribbean as gynae oncologists, 2 in Bahamas, 1 in Jamaica, and we're getting 1 in Barbados. Trinidad and Tobago needs a pap smear program. That's a gynecologic oncologist, Dr. Vanessa Harry. And even the head of the Cancer Society, Dr. Lakis, George Lakis, has been speaking for years to improve the screening for cervical cancer and to set up a national cancer registry. When I was, where was I? In 1997, I was chairman of the Northwest Regional Health Authority. Yes, go ahead, yeah. 1997.
You could go anywhere.
You could go anywhere. I am not afraid of anything.
1.6 million.
Yes, you come with that already and pure foolishness. Yeah.
Don't allow yourself to be distracted. You continue with your contribution.
It's a failed druggist.
What, the minister trying to tell me that he has been a failed druggist twice? And be an aspiring doctor? You have to go through medical school and you have to get through the admission first before you reach medical school.
We need passes first, huh? Need all effort.
So, Madam Speaker, the areas of pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, all these things, early detection is an important issue. And we urge the government to set up the programs and the policies to be able to implement these areas. And also, with a proper primary health care system, with public education, you will be able to eliminate a number of these primary health care areas, primary diseases. So the mismanagement, Madam Speaker, which is part of the limb of the motion. You have a blackout at San Fernando General Hospital. You know how many lives were endangered there? Children in the neonatal intensive care unit, adults in the intensive care unit. The electricity goes. In 1 minute, they will die. Thank God, none of the patients at San Fernando Hospital died as a result of this blackout. But what type of system you have, what type of board, what type of management you have, that you will have an electricity system and you wouldn't have standby generators kicking in immediately.
With diesel.
Yeah? So that, and patients in operating theater, the abdomen open, the chest open, or the brain open, and electricity goes. You could imagine the poor surgeon at that time with the nurses in operating theater, frightened like hell. Where are we? You have a bleeding blood vessel, electricity goes, Make sure that all your institutions have standby generators and working and functional. And my understanding is that there was an issue of having to do an upgrade of the electrical system at San Fernando Hospital. 40 million was supposed to be the contract sum. It wasn't done. It wasn't done. They avoided doing the contract for that. And so as a result, people nearly lost their lives, Madam Speaker. So that life-threatening issue is unpardonable. And then lights were restored. We also have the situation of mismanagement, government not paying the health suppliers, Madam Speaker. Ministry unable to pay. And then when the ministry is unable to pay, the Minister of Finance coming later on and saying, now, look, I am the boss, and now okaying 245 million for medication. And here are the medications that were missing and were absent. Sources at several of the public hospitals and health centers told the Express the situation with the drug shortage of some of the medications that are lacking include no insulin, no antihypertensive medication, no asthma medication, no heart care medication, no cancer medication, no promazole, common drug for acid reflux, no antibiotic creams, few antibiotic tablets, no urine collection cups, no urine pregnancy test kits, no Clexane for preventing deep vein thrombosis, no Augmentin, a basic drug like Augmentin, no lenses for cataract surgeries, no glaucoma eye drops. Madam Speaker, that is the state of the health sector under the P&M administration. It is poor, apathetic, totally sad, man.
No minister neither.
When he said about the vaccine, you needed to have a yellow fever vaccine, the vaccine ran out. It was an ill-advised ministry release that caused
Madam
panic.
Speaker, 48-1, there was no shortage of yellow fever vaccine in this country.
Member for Caroni East, please continue.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. This issue, Minister, I will agree with you. On October 2017, Thursday, you said hospitals ripped off by local suppliers in orthopedic parts and so on. I agree with you on that.
He said so.
And yes, he said that advantage was being taken off by to the regional health authorities where people were asking exorbitant sums for these equipment. But yet still, when you sorted that out, why couldn't you provide the relevant medical equipment and supplies for the surgeons to do their surgery in terms of orthopedic surgery, neurosurgery, etc.? I remember an incident where I was operating down at West Shore one day, and I got a call, somebody answered my phone. And there was a call from Port of Spain Hospital operating theater. One of the neurosurgeons was in the brain. And they said, Dr. Gopeesingh, we need an aneurysm clip.
What is that?
An aneurysm clip is a clip to clip one of the vessels to prevent a bleed in the brain. So I said, well, what is where you get it and what's the cost? It's $180,000 for the set. So I, as chairman, can't make do the responsibility on my own. So I told them to call around, and the CEO was able to get the aneurysm box, $180,000, but only one of these 18 was needed for it. But you have to deal with it. So you have to get your surgical supplies. So prosthesis for knee transplant, for hip transplant, for all these things. You know what it is to have a person with a fractured leg, a femur, which is this upper part, lying in a hospital bed with their leg pulled on a trolley with weights on their leg for 6 weeks, traction, and can't move right or left, have to wee-wee with a bedpan, can't have the stools pass properly. And that is a distressing thing. Just get the K-nail that you need for the surgical procedure, and that patient will be out of the hospital in 2 days. But some of these patients have to remain there for 6 weeks on traction. And when, at the end of 6 weeks, when you do the check X-ray, the bones have not been properly opposed together. They have a malfunctioning leg, and they have a shortened leg. So these things, Minister, you have an onerous responsibility. If you can't do the job, get out and let somebody else do the job. And if you have regional authorities with board people sitting in a boardroom and not making rounds across the hospital, not understanding what the system is, you have a CEO going on the wards once a week. That is unacceptable. They must be getting out there fired up to do the things which they're required to do. This is what the People's Partnership government has done. Minister Khan got all his boards working, the CEO working, and he had a team to give him some help at that time. And look at what is happening again. Point Fortin Hospital have snakes.
What?
Snakes.
Don't say that.
Snakes in the hospital in Point Fortin. A ceiling collapse at San Fernando Hospital. The Port-au-Prince sterilizing unit goes down, and so on. Then mom seeks 400,000 for Southwest Regional Health Authority for negligence. Hospital calls woman stroke. Patient files lawsuit against NCRH. Who to blame? They're blaming now teen given seizure pills for flu-like symptoms. Time for independent commission into maternal deaths. A lady, we know how mom died, says Minister Deyalsingh. We are ready and willing to provide all info. You shouldn't have to do that. Make sure that the system is working well. Hospital probes woman death after giving birth, and so on. Amputee claims misdiagnosis at hospital. And it goes on and on. Misuse of antibiotics trigger health woes. 18 days after giving birth, Southwest Regional Health Authority investigates death of mom, and so on. So, Madam Speaker, I am not making up these. Bats, rats, closed health center. Huh? Bats and rats close the health center. Patient saw body being dumped. A man at 80 years dies at the hospital entrance, and so on. So, Madam Speaker, 43 and 26, 17 and 14. How much time I have again, Madam Speaker?
You just have about a little under 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So, Madam Speaker, as I close then, decisive, urgent action must be taken by the Prime Minister to remove the Health Minister, whose egomaniacal countenance has given him the unenviable title as the worst Minister of Health. We call upon this government to initiate actions and policies and programs that will be effective and efficient to prevent the loss of lives. We call on the Prime Minister to do the appropriating and remove the Minister of Health and replace him with someone who is very competent and capable of doing the job. Thank you very much.
Might I ask Member for Caroni?
I beg to move, Madam Speaker.
Might I ask if that you're going to amend your motion?
Pardon?
Might I ask if you intend to amend your motion?
No, Madam Speaker.
Okay, this motion requires a seconder.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion and reserve my right. I really hope I have the right to speak.
This motion having been seconded, I now shall put the question. Honorable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate, and it's be it resolved that this House condemn the government for its mismanagement of the health sector and call for the implementation of remedial measures, policies, and programs. Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to all. Madam Speaker, this motion reminds me of a similar motion brought by the same member about the collapse of the education sector some months ago. He condemned the government for the collapse of the education system. But you know what he does today? He comes here and congratulates 18,000 SEA students who passed the SEA exam. So where is the collapse of the education system? So what I'm going to do, Madam Speaker, is refute all the allegations and all the anecdotal stories with facts and figures. Because what the honorable member came with here is innuendo, anecdotal evidence, and not backed up by any statistic or data. Madam Speaker, the honorable member offered his help and the opposition's help to help fix the health sector. You know what is so hypocritical about that statement? when we laid the Welsh report in this honorable chamber. We said, send it to a joint select committee, members of the opposition, members of the government. Do you know what the member for Siparia did? She refused to put one member of the opposition on a joint select committee to dispassionately, objectively deal with the health sector. But today, laced with innuendo, he comes here and offers help. That is why I'm saying it was a hypocritical statement.
Very much so.
I want to put that on the record. The Member of Parliament for Siparia refused the Prime Minister's invitation to send the Welsh report to a joint select committee. So that is innuendo number one, put to rest. Madam Speaker, I was wondering if the honorable member for Caroni East was really referring to the period prior to September 2015, or if he was asleep during my many statements to the Parliament over the past 3 years on significant achievements in the public sector. Madam Speaker, there's something called amnesia, which refers to the loss of memories, such as facts, information, and experiences. And there are 4 types of amnesia, but I will only go into one type, and it's called retrograde amnesia. What is retrograde amnesia, Madam Speaker? It is the inability to retrieve information that was acquired before a particular date, usually the date of an accident or operation. My friend did not have an accident. He did not have an operation. But the country surgically excised the UNC on September 17, 2015. And that is the date from which his selective retrograde amnesia started. And I will now give you facts and figures to demonstrate that. Because one must remember what took place prior to the People's National Movement coming into office. Madam Speaker, I will deal with one thing first. He called a particular drug and said, we have none, no augmentin. Remember, Madam Speaker, I had to go to the hospital on Monday morning. I have an eye infection. I had to call Minister Stuart Young, who is the chairman of FNGP, and tell him I'm coming late to FNGP because my eyes were swollen. You might have seen me doing this during the presentation. It's not tears. It's not crying. It's because my eyes are giving me some trouble. And you know what was the drug that was prescribed, both as a topical antibiotic drops and a systemic antibiotic drops? Augmentin.
And it was available.
You know what happened? I went to the pharmacy in Port of Spain General Hospital, and there was Augmentin. Take one tablet twice a day after meals. But it was not the Augmentin brand. It was Curam, which is a generic. And that is part of the problem we have in Trinidad and Tobago. So the Augmentin brand is not available, but you got Curam, the same drug, and the member ought to know this. Because he spelled out his resume. I thought he was advertising. And there's a rule in the medical fraternity, you don't advertise. I thought he put up a shingle here today to look for patients. Right? So the drug I got was Augmentin. So I've dealt with that. Madam Speaker, the member, when he was speaking, spoke about the right to life. Patients have a right to life. I want to ask the honorable member, where was he prior to now? Where was he in 2010 to 2015 when pregnant women, because you're a distinguished obstetrician and gynecologist, as you have stated, where were you in that time when pregnant women in this country were dying every year by the 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, and 12s? Where were you? Where were you? Why didn't you fix it? Madam Speaker, The date of September 17th, November 2015 will go down in history in this country as the date when a Minister of Health, yours truly, took charge of the issue of reducing maternal mortality rates. We held a massive meeting up at the boardroom at Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex. And when I spelled out my plans, you know what one senior doctor got up and said? I can remember his face, God rest his soul. He said, Minister, I have heard it all before, and you can't do it. That is what you are faced with when you are trying to institute change. But I was not deterred. Women were dying under the UNC by 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, 12s per year. You know what we have that down to now? Between 4 to 6 per year, for the most. We have achieved our Sustainable Development Goals for maternal mortality, which we are supposed to hit by 2030 in 2018, 12 years ahead of schedule. We have estimated that you have 20 women alive now because we have reduced that rate from 2016, 17, 18, 19. 20 women are alive now because of this administration. And those statistics cannot be doubted, they can be verified, they can be audited. And this is recognized around the world as Trinidad and Tobago being a leader because of plans and policies which the honorable member spoke about. But the only country where that does not register is where? Trinidad and Tobago, because good news does not sell. We have achieved that. 20 more women are alive because of this government. You spoke about right to life. Let's go on to the right of life. The honorable member made the most outlandish statement with no statistic. He said, infant mortality remains a challenge. Let me give you the facts. Let me give you the figures which have been audited. The neonatal period, which accounts for the bulk of infant mortality deaths, is day 1 when you are born to 28 days. During that period, you would agree, is where most of the infants die. On coming into office, Madam Speaker, the neonatal mortality rate in this country, under the directorship of CEO, Member of Parliament for Faizabad, Southwest, Caroni East, and Barataria Sawa. Brilliant man. That brilliant man was part of a system that had the neonatal mortality rate at what? 12 per 1,000 live births. In other words, for every 1,000 babies born, 12 of those will die between day 1 and day 28. Our figures, which have gone to PAHO, for the Director of Women's Health, Ministry, yes, which have been audited. The SDG goals for this country to be achieved by 2030 speaks about a neonatal mortality rate of under 9. Do you know what our rate is now? 8.7. Yes. Those are facts. Those are figures. But my friend stands up here and says the infant mortality rate remains a challenge. It is not a challenge, sir. We have brought it down 40%. 40%. In other words, the same way 20 more mothers are alive during our period, when you look at that 12 per 1,000 live births to under 8 or 9 per 1,000 live births, more than 94 babies per year are going home with their parents. Under their stewardship, those 94 babies that are now alive would have died. Those are the facts. Those are the facts. But because my friend has selective amnesia, and I called out the definition for retrograde amnesia, facts and figures go out the window. Madam Speaker, so I have dealt with the right for life. I have dealt with maternal mortality rates. But Madam Speaker, as Minister of Health and one who has taken up the mantle for protecting women's health in Trinidad and Tobago, and as technology grasps more and more, and as more women delay childbearing into their late 30s and 40s, what we are seeing in the public healthcare system and the private healthcare system, and my honorable friend from Caroni East will know, and Faisabad, is more and more women in their late 30s, early 40s seeking to have children. And no one should deny them that joy. No one. However, with technology, especially IVF in vitro fertilization, we are seeing in the public sector the individual cases now popping up because of something called ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, or OHSS, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. And as something as Minister of Health, I think I have a duty, speaking about plans and policies, I have a duty to alert the women of Trinidad and Tobago that when you seek these services, you should be aware and get independent advice of whether you're a perfect candidate for ovarian hyperstimulation, for hormonal treatments, which could result in ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. And Madam Speaker, with your permission, I just want to read briefly from a document from the Mayo Clinic. Ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome affects women taking injectable hormone medications to stimulate the development of eggs in the ovaries. Too much hormone medication in your system can lead to ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. Madam Speaker, what we are now doing with this information, and we are seeing one or two women now presenting with the complications of this, we in the public sector have now decided to classify any woman who has had IVF, who may be suffering from ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, as a high-risk pregnancy. We have done that. That's a policy prescription to continue the reduction of our maternal mortality rates. That has to be done because we can't turn a blind eye to technology and women who want to be educated go into the job market and delay childbearing into their late 30s and 40s. But we have to support them. And it would be remiss of me as Minister of Health if I did not put this out in the public domain. And I'm hoping the member for Faisabad, who may speak on this motion, can support me on this. Because, Madam Speaker, OHSS can be from mild to severe. Members spoke about blood clots in legs. That is a symptom. That is an outcome. Decreased urination, shortness of breath, severe abdominal pain. So, Madam Speaker, as this government continues to drive down the maternal mortality rates, this issue needs to be put frontally on the burner for women and their partners to look at. Madam Speaker, the member spoke about no lenses for cataract. Do you know we have done 40% more cataracts than they did? And I have said so in the Parliament. We have done 40% more cataract surgeries in the public sector. And I have given the figures here because a question was asked by the member for Faisabad. So he has the answer. Please check with your colleague. Right? And that is source. Right? Good. Madam Speaker, my friend spoke about the CT scanner in San Fernando Hospital, and I wish he hadn't raised it. I wish, and the member for Faisabad is laughing because he knows where I am going to come from. The 64-slice CT scanner, that is a perennial problem in San Fernando, was purchased under the administration of Mr. Patrick Manning. Hold on, no. The Patrick Manning administration bought it. It was delivered to Trinidad in May of 2010. And there was an election in what, April of 2010? May? It landed here just before the election. That CT4, 64-slice CT scanner. Faisabad, I'm sorry to have to do this, but your colleague your colleague raised it. I will come to the... Madam Speaker, that 64-slice CT scanner lay unused, open to the elements in its shipping crate for 3 years under the stewardship of the Member of Parliament for Faizabad, who was the CEO, who was the chairman of the board. I'm not finished. It lay in a crate for 3 years. It gets worse. It lay there for 3 years. Moisture developed. When moisture develops in these pieces of equipment, it damages the equipment. It was finally installed in April of 2013, after 3 years. But by that time, the boards, the motherboards, everything had to be changed. And because of that, there was no warranty on the machine. The warranty ran out. And this is what I have inherited. And we have been limping with that machine since then to now. The good news is that San Fernando General Hospital will have a brand new 64-slice machine this year.
Well done. Well done.
So if we are talking about incompetence in health, speak to the member of Faizabad and ask him why he let that CT scanner lay idle for not 1, for not 2, but 3 years, and allow the warranty to run out. So every time we have to fix it now. No, there's not sabotage. Right? So that's the story with the CT scanner. Madam Speaker, my colleague spoke about doctors and foreign doctors and so on. I have said time and time again that the issue in Trinidad and Tobago is that we have too many junior doctors and not enough senior doctors. And I am always called to task by the UNC for bringing in Cuban doctors. Madam Speaker, Cabinet note, health, June 15, 2011. Who was in office then? The UNC. Do you know what they did? Cabinet note, recruitment, further employment of healthcare professionals from the Republic of Cuba. And the note goes on to say, in a letter dated June 3rd, 2011, the ambassador of the Republic of Cuba to Trinidad and Tobago has informed the government of the Republic of Cuba has undertaken to provide how many? 400 medical personnel, doctors and nurses. Why? Because there's a shortage of specialist doctors in Trinidad and Tobago. The DM programs in UE, of which there are 19, I checked this morning. You know what is the average intake for each DM program? Anesthesiology, orthopedics, everything, between 5 and 10. That's the average intake. That cannot satisfy the demand for both the private and public sector. That is why we have to go to Cuba. That is why. And Madam Speaker, to further solidify the point, I want to refer to an article that appeared in the Express, Monday, 20th August 2018. Dean, that is Dean Terry Simangal, on doctor shortage. It takes time to train specialists. That is the problem, Madam Speaker. Every year, the University of the West Indies churns out some 320 qualified doctors. But the issue is how many of them go on for specialty training. And I've given you the figures and statistics that say of the 19 DM programs in UE, each one is only subscribed by about 5 to 10 per cohort. Not enough. And that is why we have to continue to go to Cuba. Talking about shortages of nurses, Madam Speaker, It is under the UNC, in 2013, that the former Minister of Health stopped the specialist training nursing program. Stopped it. That is why, honorable member, we have this shortage. I have inherited your mess. So we don't have enough BHVs, we don't have enough ICU nurses, we don't have enough midwives, and that's why we have to go to Cuba for specialist nurses. So, Madam Speaker, again, I have debunked that theory. Madam Speaker, I now come to the Cuba Hospital and Central Block, and I will deal with Central Block first. I have admitted to the country and admitted to the public in this place and in the media that following the earthquake, yes, when we had to decant Central Block, we have a problem. But, Madam Speaker, where does it fall for that lie? Why was not Central Block rebuilt in the years 2010 to 2015? And to hear the hypocrisy today, about Central Block curdles my blood.
And they take 16 billion from NGC.
You built Cuba, but you did not build Central Block. Madam Speaker, let me give you the PNM's history now in Central Block. I did not say a word while anybody was speaking. Madam Speaker, I made a statement in this Parliament on June 2017 that Cabinet approved, you hear the date? June 2017, the building of a new Central Block. We went out for EOIs, we went out for RFPs, and a contract was signed with the Shanghai Construction Group, the same people who built Cuba, in February 2019. Contract has been signed. It's going to be a 540-bed tower. So if there are any deaths due to bed shortages at Port of Spain, it lays on the feet of the member for Caroni East, who was part of a cabinet that ignored Central Block. And you know what is most galling about that? When the contract was announced, the member for Barataria Sawa asked the acting prime minister at the time, he was the Minister of Finance, did you all decant Central Block on purpose so you could award a contract to Shanghai? I don't know if the Minister of Finance remembers that. He was the acting prime minister of the time, and he took prime minister's questions. I remember it. The member for Barataria Sama was against the building of a new Central Block. But today, the hypocrisy is, why you're not building Central Block? Madam Speaker, where are they coming from? Where are they coming from? So to take care of the overcrowding at Central Block, at Port of Spain, this government is now spending $55 million, which we ought not to have been spending if Central Block was built under the UNC, to retrofit two buildings, one in Port of Spain, the Costard building, and St. James, to accommodate that. Those works are ongoing, and those new bed spaces, approximately 200 bed spaces, will be available within the next couple of months. But what we have already done is built new ICUs in Port of Spain. I was there last week and I saw them.
Well done.
So we have to spend extra money now because of the incompetence of my friends opposite, who built Cuba while steering a seismic disaster waiting to happen. And did what, Madam Speaker? Nothing. Did nothing. It is this Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, who publicly and personally took ownership of that Central Block issue, and he is to be congratulated. So that's Central Block. Madam Speaker, my friend also spoke about places for doctors and so on. Madam Speaker, yesterday, I signed a file to place, for the first time in this country, 234 interns into the public healthcare system.
Well done. And it wasn't friends and family.
234. And you know what's the cost to the taxpayer for this? $46,287,072. That is what this government is spending. Madam, yeah, but we increased the number. But Madam Speaker, you know what is most pleasing to me on this, and I would not call that person's name unless I have permission?
Yeah, permission.
No, not from you. Many people in the past whose families, whose parents, and who had their children as interns had to beg at the ministry, put my son here, put my daughter there, give me a space. You know what happens now? Nobody has to come to me. They are all placed because of systems.
Well done. Well done.
Because of systems. There's no string pulling. There's no begging. In one day. And if I have permission from that person, I will tell you who that person is, but I'm not getting the permission. So, Madam Speaker, that's what we are doing.
Meritocracy.
Meritocracy. Nobody has to come to me. They used to come to me in the first year. But I said, no, we have to fix the system. A parent shouldn't be running to a minister because he knows the minister, or getting a member from the opposition to talk to me to take on an intern. Those days are done. Those days are done. Systems, meritocracy. Madam Speaker, the honorable member spoke at length about the NCD crisis. And nobody has championed NCDs more than this Minister of Health and this government. Madam Speaker, the member spoke about be on the airways. That's what they like. Spend money on advertising agencies and spend money on media. We have taken a completely different approach. My friends opposite had 5 years to consummate an agreement with the Inter-American Development Bank to fight NCDs. The member for Carnegie Central will know about it because he was Minister of Planning and Development. What did the UNC do with that? Nothing. They sat on that loan proposal for 5 years under the Ministry of the NCD plan. The member for Carnegie Central, who was Minister of Planning and Development, sat on that IDB proposal for 5 years. We consummated it within 1 year of coming into office. Yes, we cut down the amount from 110 million to 55 million. But now, for the first time in the history of this country, you have a strategic plan which says we are going to decrease the incidence of deaths due to NCDs by 20% by 2025. First time you have a plan. The member was speaking about plans and policies. So you have the strategic intent. What are we doing now operationally? Because we have to tackle diabetes, hypertension, and the top 5 cancers. Madam Speaker, we have significantly enhanced the CDAP program by putting money into CDAP and decreasing the fees paid to pharmacies. I would not go into the details. I have given that already. But Madam Speaker, let me give you some statistics and plans. For the first time in the history of this government, of this country, you had a government and a Minister of Health who had the fortitude to ban the sale of soft drinks in schools. That's right. That's what we did. That's what we did. Attacking sugar. You had a policy, but you did nothing. You did nothing. And Madam Speaker, the issue of sugar needs to be addressed. And I want to quote from a BBC article.
Karine, I know you're very passionate about this, but I would ask you to sort of keep it in check until you come to wind up, okay?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issue of sugar in our society is not one you can change overnight.
Your original speaking time is now spent. You're entitled to 15 more minutes
Thank you.
to complete. A member for Urupuch East. You know, I am really straining my eyes and ears to recognize you today. And therefore, I'd ask you, please, not to strain it too much. I don't think we have a good sight or hearing medical plan. Please.
Yes, Madam Speaker, so Trinidad and Tobago has put the issue of NCDs firmly on the regional and global map. In addition to banning sugary drinks in schools, I want to alert parents again. Look at a BBC article. Give children less sugar and more vegetables in baby food. They are now recommending that baby food manufacturers make sugar-free baby food. The amount of sugar in baby food should be restricted. Madam Speaker, sugar is to this generation what smoking was to other generations. Yeah. It's a death sentence waiting to happen. And people's refrigerators and pantries are harbingers of death in this country. It is there that children start a slow life of being dependent on sugar and development on NCDs. And I preach that everywhere I go. Your refrigerators, your pantries, and your kitchens are harbingers of death. I leave that alone. Madam Speaker, the NCD plan. For the first time in this country, we had a PSA outreach at North Central. We screened 1,000 men, 1,000 men in one day. And out of that, we got 115 with elevated PSA levels. Great Pap smear initiative. June 18th, 2018, 375 tested, 9 precancerous. September 2018, 515 precancerous. Last month I was there, we tested 1,000 women. This is the start of a national NCD screening program, which we have started. My friend spoke about primary health care and keep health centers open to treat diabetes. That is the wrong model. What we are doing is setting up the diabetes wellness centers. We have set up one in Derrick Williams. We have set up a wound center in Arima to do exactly that, have less amputations. So we have done it. Where others failed, we have succeeded. Madam Speaker, with the last few minutes, I want to come to the Couva Hospital. I have put on the record that the Couva Hospital should never have been built at the expense of Central Block, but it is there. That facility was opened and commissioned on September the 14th, August the 14th, 2015, mere days before a general election. And from then to now, I have been bombarded by the UNC and the media, rightly so, when you're going to open Couva. And when the 64-slice CT breaks down in San Fernando, that Pfizer took 3 years to commission, I am asked why we don't go to Couva. When the MRI breaks down, why you don't go to Couva? Madam Speaker, I will tell you why now, and it's an absolute scandal. Absolute scandal. Because if this government and this Minister of Health had sent any patient to Couva to use that CT machine and that MRI machine, we would have been sued. And let me explain to you why now, point up here.
Just like how we get sued in energy.
You opened that facility on August 14, 2015. Do you know that Siemens never came down here to do application training? But you opened it. We didn't stop them. Why did you open it? Let me tell you what application training means, Madam Speaker. Application training for the ultrasounds, the fluoroscopy, mammography, is a service provided by the manufacturer to support, advise, and train end users on all parts and the functions. If you do not have the application training for those pieces of equipment, do you know what could have happened to a patient? They could have been over-radiated and died. Wow. get radiation burns, or they could have been under-radiated and their tumors would grow. But you also open the state and the taxpayer to hundreds of millions of dollars in liability. I want to ask the members opposite, why didn't you bring down Siemens prior to August 14, 2015, when you commissioned the facility to do application training? It is left to this administration to do that, and somebody from Siemens is going to be here on July 7th to do application training so we could start to use the machines. So, Madam Speaker, it is not 4 years. It was a construction site until 2016. So, Madam Speaker, I have stated publicly that the Couva facility will be operationalized in July of this year. July of this year, which starts next week.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll be starting with diagnostic imaging, fluoroscopy, mammography, X-rays, CTs, MRIs. We now have to do the application training. So people are not either over-radiated or under-radiated. And remember for Couva not to saying, wow. The question is, what was your plan on August 14, 2015 to over-radiate people? I have just told you what the plan is, to bring down people to do the application training.
Member for Couva North. Member for Couva North. I am sure, as a very experienced female parliamentarian, you wouldn't allow anybody to carry you down a track that you know you shouldn't travel. Okay, so I'd ask you, please, to comply with Standing Order 53.
Madam Speaker, so that is scandal number 1 in the use of that equipment. Scandal number 2, the Couva Hospital, to use those pieces of equipment, was never equipped with a PAC system. What is a PAC system for the layperson? Picture archiving and communication system. In other words, all the images taken go to the central repository to be sent out for reading and reporting. What was the plan for the UNC to report on these scans? So you put somebody in a machine, and then you can't report on the scans. We now are purchasing, have purchased, and have installed a PAC system, a picture archiving communication system, so that all scans can be received at a central repository, the archive, communicated to different people for reading and reporting. That will be done, has been done in July of this year. That is how we are going to start to operationalize Couva Hospital as a referral hospital from the RHAs. So instead of sending patients out to the private sector for all these imaging services, the RHAs simply send them to Couva, and instead of us paying the private sector, we pay Couva under a special purpose company that has already been set up. So, Madam Speaker, those are the 2 scandalous pieces of incompetence, to use my colleague's word, incompetence in rushing to open the Couva Hospital as an election gimmick. They were going to over-radiate people, give them radiation burns and/or kill them, or I retract. The risk, you were going to put people at the risk of a premature death.
Take that back. We couldn't be doing that. That is insinuating the proper note. 48-6. Take that back. You could
Overrule. Overrule.
Thank you. And that is what happens when you don't engage in applications training for a CT machine and an MRI. Either overexposure, underexposure, you risk patient safety, and you open the state to millions of dollars in liability. So, Madam Speaker, with the few minutes I have left, I think I have dealt with all the substantive issues raised. I want to ask a member for Caroni East. When a member for Faizabad was the chairman of the board of Southwest, and there was a picture in The Guardian with 12 people, including a taxi driver, who couldn't get chemotherapy drugs. Why didn't you bring a motion against Mr. Fuad Khan? There is a picture in The Guardian, Member of Parliament for Faizabad, who was chairman of the Southwest. It is August 2014 in The Guardian. Why we didn't bring a motion of, why didn't we bring a motion? When the member for Barataria Sawa told CDAP patients, buy your CDAP drugs because he can't supply drugs, why was there no motion? Why wasn't the member for Barataria Sawa called incompetent? But Madam Speaker, we have fixed CDAP, we have fixed chemotherapy, we have fixed central block, we will be operationalized CUVA, we have solved the issue of maternal deaths, we have brought down infant mortality rates, we have done wonderfully well with limited resources. And Madam Speaker, with those few words, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this motion. I, first of all, would like to commend my colleague, the Member of Parliament for Caroni East, for bringing a very timely motion. The member himself being an obstetrician gynecologist of repute, a former lecturer at Mount Hope, has been in the health system for many years, a former chairman of a major health authority, and of course, eminently qualified to speak on this issue. So I want to congratulate him, and I rise in support of his motion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I go into the meat of the motion, please allow me the opportunity to just correct a few of the utterances made by the Member of Parliament for St. Joseph and the Minister of Health. And the member mentioned the Welch report and not going to a JSC. I just want to make it clear that the government still had the option to deal with the Welch report. It may have been that perhaps there were not any substantial recommendations in that report. With all due respect to the authors of that report, Madam Speaker, and perhaps that's the reason why it was scuttled. I just want to point out, though, to the national population, Madam Speaker, that that report, and you know, it makes me wonder about how this government takes decisions. There was a very frightening statement in that report, and this report was produced 2 years after the San Fernando Teaching Hospital was commissioned. This is a building now that was housing patients, 240 new beds. And there was a statement in that report, in that Welch report, Madam Speaker, that suggested that perhaps the use of the San Fernando Teaching Hospital should be reviewed. I was shocked, Madam Speaker, to read such a statement. The implications of that, if taken seriously by any government, would mean that you would have to remove patients from a hospital and repurpose that building. Very, very frightening indeed. But I say no more about that. I'll just leave that to rest, Madam Speaker. I do want to wish the Minister all the best with his eye infection. Minister, I trust that you will get better soon. And I'm happy to hear that there's augmentin available, Curam or whatever. Just be aware, of course, this is just friendly advice that Curam does cause a lot of diarrhea. So I would just advise you that to be cautious in your use of Curam. Madam Speaker, this issue of maternal mortality, continues to raise itself in the national domain, in the Parliament. And you know, I am very pleased, I am very happy to know that maternal mortality is decreasing in our country, in Trinidad and Tobago. As a gynecologist and obstetrician myself, I'm very happy for this. But I also want to point out, Madam Speaker, and you know, this is important, and you know, I just want to suggest to the member for St. Joseph that he took a platform from the People's Partnership government and he built on it, and nothing is wrong with that, Madam Speaker. That is fine. You know? And Madam Speaker, without demonstrating, again, I will have to draw reference to a report of the Maternity Services Review Committee, Trinidad and Tobago, Ministry of Health, which would be in the minister's hand, I'm sure. It must be in his hands, because out of this report, there came a recommendation for the appointment of a director of women's health. And the minister took that recommendation and appointed a director of women's health. One of our colleagues, Dr. Vidia Gayadeen-Gopeesingh, who is doing who is doing a good job. But that's a recommendation that came from this report, and the said director was a part of the team, that commissioned this report. And you know, the member talked about eye surgery and so on. I just, you know, I'm looking at one of the many documents the partition government produced whilst in office, Madam Speaker. And I see a picture here of myself, much younger looking then, because this was in 2011, Madam Speaker, standing next to the Honorable Prime Minister at that time, now the member for Siparia, herself looking quite elegant in this picture. And Madam Speaker, what we were doing is that we were cutting the ribbon to commission a new eye theater at the San Fernando General Hospital. So this was in 2011. So what we would have done, Madam Speaker, is to provide a brand new facility, an updated facility, and of course that is something that could have been built on for the government to go ahead and improve the eye services and decrease operating time for cataract surgery and so on. So I just make that point to indicate that we would have left many bridges in place that could have been built on. And I'll come back and try to understand. Very difficult, I'm sure, for the national population to understand why it is the minister would not have adopted the same approach in utilizing the Couva Children's Hospital that was left for him. But we'll talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit later on, Madam Speaker. So the issue of maternal mortality, we are happy. You know, and this thing about dramatizing statistics, you know, and making the population feel that, you know, that so much increase, so much improvement has taken place. Madam Speaker, in the issue of maternal and neonatal and perinatal mortality, these things take years, and they are built upon platforms. And the minister has brought it down from 10 to 12 per year to 6 to 10 per year, and I'm happy for that. But it still means that we have a long way to go. It still means that on an annual basis, 6 to 10 women die. And therefore, the question, that's your statistics. That's your stats. 6 to 10. Well, 4 to 6. 4 to 6, Minister. But still, you would agree that still women die. And therefore, the point I'm making is that we still have a long way to go. And again, there are many recommendations in this, which I trust that your Director of Women's Health is taking on board. And with those are taken on board, I'm sure we can do even better as we go forward, Madam Speaker. Before I leave this report and before I leave the issue of maternal and neonatal mortality, again, I want to make a call, Minister, for you to again look at the issue of an independent committee to probe maternal deaths. I don't want to quote myself, but this is an article here which was quoted, where I asked for an independent committee to investigate these deaths for two reasons. One, it will give the assurance to the public that, that there is no cover-up. And the second thing, it is going to produce the facts, and those facts can be shared with the healthcare practitioners, okay, to improve care for all of us. All of us at some point in time are going to access the health system. So I'll leave it there. With regards to your comments on in vitro fertilization and the complication of OHSS, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, I agree it's something that we have to be aware of now. And in terms of making it a high-risk indicator for pregnancies, I agree with that. But at the same time, Minister, what I would want to point out is that the women who can afford IVF and ovarian stimulation, they have to be, they have to have some means. And there are many in the population who don't have the means to treat their subfertility and their infertility. And I make an appeal for you to consider having purpose clinics for infertility in the public health sector. That's something that could be done, and we can do certain investigations up to a certain stage. And then if that doesn't work well, then they can go on to these centers where the treatment is much more expensive. So you spoke about cataracts. I will not go into that. We spoke about the basis for the cataracts. But again, to point out that the story is not all rosy. And there are still many shortages in the department with regards to cataracts, both equipment and supplies. Now, no CT scanning in San Fernando General Hospital. You know, Minister, I would trust that you just got your information wrong and that you were not trying to mislead this Parliament and the public. And you're correct that I was the chairman of the Southwest Regional Health Authority from 2010 to 2015. I was indeed. And you're correct that there was a CT scanner that was lying in a container for 3 years. But Minister, that CT scanner was not on the compound of the Southwest Regional Health Authority. So please check again your source. They will tell you that that scanner was somewhere in Mount Hope. I don't know where it was in Mount Hope. I got it. As soon as I realized it was there, I got it, and I installed it and commissioned it in San Fernando Hospital. So I just want to put that on the record, Madam Speaker. My track record as chairman of Southwest would not have allowed for something like that to happen. That would never have happened. So Minister, you would want to check your source and make sure that you're not misled, with regards to other information. The issue of the Cuban doctors, I am not aware that we on this side have anything against Cuban doctors. That arrangement that you spoke about in 2011 is a long-standing arrangement. It's an arrangement that, as you're aware, perhaps you neglected to say, but there would have been previous cabinet notes that spoke of arrangements with the Cuban doctors. And yeah, it started a long time ago, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they serve a function. It's a long practice. And there are two issues I just want to raise with that. One is you're saying that those doctors are coming because we have an issue with specialist programs. I agree with you. But Minister, how do you explain the fact that the San Fernando Teaching Hospital had 2 purpose-built floors, and the member for Oropouche East, then the Minister for UDCOT, which was in charge of building that facility, had 2 purpose-built floors with anatomy labs, physiology labs, and member for Shogunas East as well would attest to that. And those were given for teaching. It was meant to increase teaching at the San Fernando Hospital to produce more specialists. Madam Speaker, those two floors that were specially equipped and purpose-built for training of specialists, you know who occupies them now? Not people. Not people. Files, medical files are stored there now. They're being used by the Human Resource Department at the RHA. Minister, I'm sure if you're aware of that, you wouldn't have allowed that. We talk about that. You have a chance to talk about that. That was to ensure productivity and efficiency. So I just wanted to make that point, Madam Speaker. Now, Central Block. Central Block, you spoke about Central Block and why we did not build Central Block. And you indicated and you imputed that the Member of Parliament, the member for Barrett, someone who is not here, and the then Minister of Health, was against building Central Block. You know, in the member's absence, I just want to say that this member and then Minister of Health was not against anything. He was for everything in the health sector. So it's unfair to make a statement that he was against building the Central Block. And I want the population to understand that this whole issue of Central Block and Port of Spain and San Fernando and Mount Hope was part of the holistic picture. It was part of the way that we, as a government then, thought about the health sector. And Madam Speaker, the population should be aware that the refurbishment of Port of Spain Hospital would have included a holistic plan to deal with a new Port of Spain Hospital. Those plans are there, Minister. I'm sure that you're aware of it. Likewise for San Fernando. And let me talk a little bit about San Fernando as part of those plans. And it is part of the problem that you are facing now with the overcrowding and all of the issues and so on. Because when that teaching hospital was built and commissioned in 2014, the purpose and the thinking behind it was that by moving some of the wards across, it would have given you the opportunity and the space to be able to refurbish the old building in the meantime and have more beds. And you have not done that. So Madam Speaker, I just wanted to clarify that issue. It was nothing about not building Central Block or building Couva instead of Central Block. It was never an argument about one against the other. It was all meant to be part of a picture, you know, and they were meant to complement each other. So it's as simple as that. 234 interns, Minister, you know, you have this way, and I must commend you, you have this way of taking figures and playing with them and trying to impress the population. You're very good at that. They're very good at that, Minister. 234 interns. Well, of course, you must have space for 234 interns. When I went to medical school, 100 of us graduated. When my senior colleague, Dr. Gopeesingh, went to medical school, probably about 60 of you would have graduated. 30, right? Then it was 100 in 1984. We are in 2019, and now the medical school alone in Trinidad produces, what, 200 doctors per year. Yeah, so if you're going to govern, what's the big deal about having 234 spaces for interns? That's what you would expect. This is what is supposed to happen. This is not an achievement. This is what you do as part of good governance. Minister? But, Minister, as you spoke about the interns, I just want you, for your own consideration, to again review, and I say this for consideration, because I have an issue with doctors who have been able to go out there and have independent practice without the necessary full training. And we have an issue where there's a whole regulation that allows a doctor, after 1 year of internship, to be able to get full registration. I know we've spoken about this before. You know, I want you to just look at that situation again and look at perhaps look at increasing, for a minute.
So, thank you. Would you support me if I approach UB to have internship increase from 1 year to 2 years? If we start the conversation, would you support me?
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. And before I answer that question directly, I want to indicate to you, Minister, that when I graduated from medical school in 1984, there was a 2-year internship. In fact, I did a 2-year internship where you did the first year rotation, the normal obstetrics, gynae, medicine, surgery, pediatrics, and then you had a second year. And I make this point because in the second year, you would do 6 months community health, and you would do a 6-month elective. I will support you because there's a precedent for it. It's been done before. It increases your experience in the hospital, and you can make better doctors. So it will require some change it will require some change, but I think it's something can be done. But more than that, Minister, it also solves another problem you have. Because when these interns graduate after a year, they can't get house officer positions. So they could be guaranteed at least 2 years employment, and then they get the registration, and they go outside, and the experience. So it's something that we should look at building on. Now, the NCD crisis we spoke about and the issue of sugar, Minister, I just wanted to refer to an article, and I'm happy that you've banned the sale of soft drinks in school and so on. That's fine. We have a big issue with childhood obesity in the country. I mean, that's something that needs to be addressed. But of course, as you know, we also have an issue with adult obesity, and how do we tackle that problem? And Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you will permit me, I just want to refer to an article in the Guardian, the Trinidad Guardian of May 10, 2019, this year. And it says, Ministry to impose sugar tax on beverages. Now, I know this came out of a discussion at one of the public account committees where technocrats at the Ministry of Health had indicated that they may be looking, the ministry and the government might be looking at the imposition of a sugar tax. I'm not saying I'm supporting a sugar tax, Minister. I just want to point out that in that committee, I think there was an excellent suggestion from one member of the committee, Member Christine Yuwalo Hussein, member on the side, who suggested to your health promoter, your advisor, Dr. Rohit Doon, that we should look at an incentive for manufacturers to reduce the sugar level in drinks and snacks rather than impose another tax on the business community. And I want to support that rather than impose a tax, we look at providing an incentive for reducing sugar in drinks and so on, and foods, of course. So we come to the Couva Hospital. We come to the Couva Hospital, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, again, with all due respect to the member for St. Joseph, the member for St. Joseph talks about application training. And I just want for the benefit of the population and the national community to understand that this application training is no big thing, This is a simple thing, and anytime you have equipment, it's part of the requirement, and that is something could have been done at any point in time. You know, applications training, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you know, is like when you buy a Bentley, you buy an expensive car and the salesman come. No, well, you prefer Mustang, okay. Member for the Spain North Centre West says, okay. When you buy a Mustang, the applications training just means the salesman come, he sits down with you in the car, and he show you how to use all the features. That's all it is, you know. That is all it is. It's no big thing. That is no big thing. That's something that is part of any commissioning process, Minister. You know, and the minister comes and he talks about a PAC system. Big words, you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Big words, PAC system. This is no big thing. You know, the PAC system is equivalent. Again, if you want to use the Mustang, that's like buying mats and putting it in the Mustang. So you have a big investment, right? You have a major investment of equipment in a hospital that costs you millions of dollars, okay? And you're telling me that applications training and PAC system is what keep you back from opening the hospital. No, you can't be serious. You can't be serious about that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. You can't be serious. No. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, having refuted those points made by the member for St. Joseph, let me get into some serious matters here, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So I want to look at the motion. I want to take the opportunity to analyze this motion, which, you know, on careful analysis has been well thought out by my colleague for Karen East. And so the first says, whereas over the past 3 years there has been a collapse of the public health sector, and I just want to look and see really, you know, we said a collapse of the public health sector, and you know, before I go on to speak about collapse of the public health sector, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to take the opportunity to commend and to congratulate all the healthcare workers in this country, all the doctors and nurses, and all the others who support the system for continuing to work and to provide service under very difficult circumstances with lack of resources, okay? And sometimes with poor management and supervision. So I want to commend them because they work under difficult circumstances. And I mean this in a very sincere way. I mean this in a very sincere way. And I hear the member, I'm not giving you. I hear the member for Laventille West. I hear the member for Laventille West, you know, in the background, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate the member for Laventille West, whose daughter just graduated as a medical doctor, and to welcome her to the profession. And I'm sure she'll make an excellent. Okay? So, of course, no, not my country.
Member, please.
So,
member.
So she got an internship position. Excellent.
Again,
so, but
members,
anyway,
members, please. Member for Faizabad, again, so, I have recognized you, and again, direct to the speaker chair, please.
Thank you.
Member for Laventille West, you will have your opportunity to join the debate.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So I was examining the phrase collapse of the health sector in the motion, and I was asking really what was the evidence for this, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And if you'll allow me the opportunity to quote from the Daily Express editorial of the 9th of May 2019, just a couple of months ago, and this is what the Express editorial had to say on the 9th of May. It said that all government ministries are important, but in the months ahead, few will be as important as the Ministry of Health as more and more people turn to public health institutions for free health care. Goes on to say, and I think this is important, it says that economic conditions aggravated by substantial and ongoing job losses, the closure of Petrotrin's Augustus Long Hospital, and increasing the number of returning and/or deported citizens, and a surge of illegal immigrants and refugees are among the factors that can be expected to increase the demand on free health care available at the nation's health centers and hospitals. These are facts. Given the extent to which they are already overburdened, the authorities must recognize the urgent need for targeted planning and strategic management. But, you know, it goes on to say here, and the editorial says, unfortunately, what is normal for public health in Trinidad and Tobago are shortages of all kinds, including beds, personnel, and medical supplies, unconscionable delays of both routine and urgent treatment, including surgeries, malfunctioning equipment, and erratic attitudes by medical and nursing staff. This is the Express saying this, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Not me saying this, not my colleague from Caroni East. So it also sounds a warning. It says, for those determined to deliver quality health care, notwithstanding all of these deficits, it can be debilitating, energy-sapping undertaking, and so on. It goes on to say all of this. So I just make that point again to say that the healthcare workers are working in difficult situations, and also that the newspaper has recognized that there is some sort of collapse in the public health sector. Now, we spoke about the right of life in this debate, and many might ask the question, you know, is healthcare right? Is healthcare right? And I just raise that because if we were to examine the UN's SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 3 is good health. It says good health. You know, and it's well placed, it's high up on the agenda because the first goal is poverty, eradication, no hunger, and then the 4th goal is quality education. So it comes right up there in the big 4, unlike the West Indies team, unfortunately, but it comes right up there in the big 4, right? Good health. But given it is not a right, even if it is not a right, and we can argue whether it is a right or not, I think it's a responsibility, it's a necessity for economic development and social stability. And I want to make that point, and I use the word social stability. Again, this is not me, this is the editorial, pointing out to something that can happen in a society where people get angry because they are not being provided with basic services like healthcare. And if you'll allow me, again, to just quote from that editorial, and it says that people who have either lost or surrendered health coverage in the private sector are now turning into the public sector and lengthening the lines of patients seeking free health care. If the additional demands is not accompanied by improved service, conditions will become ripe for heightened public disaffection with the potential for explosive anger. And I make that point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because recently in the newspaper, there was an article where I think a healthcare worker, in fact, I think a doctor was assaulted by an angry patient. So it is incumbent upon us to ensure that we provide proper health care, proper health service, okay, so that we even protect those who are working in the health service, like doctors and nurses. Because patients get angry and sometimes it goes to a different level. And we really don't want to get to that level. The second paragraph of the motion, Mr. Deputy Speaker, speaks to, and if you may just allow me to read this, it says, and whereas the collapse of our primary healthcare system and widespread suffering from chronic non-communicable diseases have resulted from the absence of public education programs, reduction in the opening hours at health centers, and the unavailability of many CDAP drugs. And I just wanted to make a few comments on that and to examine really whether we've had a collapse of the primary healthcare system. And just to note that the primary healthcare system is based on what I call the infrastructure and the systems. And again, the minister is not here, but again, I'm happy that, that he was able to put the systems on the infrastructure that was provided. And to note that in 2010, the Siparia District Health Facility was opened on a 24-hour basis, in 2011, sorry, under the Southwest RHA, and that a new health center was constructed in Palo, and I'm sure the member of Labray is very happy to have that new facility that was commissioned in 2014. A completely refurbished health center in Point Fortin was done in 2014. A new health facility in Carenage, a new wing at Mount Hope Women's Hospital, which the current minister opened, but which was construction that started under the previous government. I just make that point because yeah, at Mount Hope, because all of that infrastructure was put in place with no regard to which constituency or who was going to benefit from it. All of the Trinidad, all of the population was going to benefit from this, all over, okay? Yes, of course, and the minister spoke about pap smears and colposcopy services at the Women's Hospital in Mount Hope. That is fine. I also just want to point out that under our government, we had started the initiative of providing the HPV vaccine, which is a prevention for cervical cancer, and that was executed by the previous Minister of Health. And I make this point because that's how health goes. We do one thing, you do the next thing. It's a complement. They complement each other, and we have to understand that and support that and work with that, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Right, and then, well, my colleague spoke about the extended opening hours. I still believe I want to support. There's still a role for the extended hours. I would make a plea to the government to reconsider those they have closed down, and they can be of benefit in circumstances when people return after work and so on. They can utilize those facilities. On a Saturday, for example, in the constituency office, Faizabad, where right next door there is a health center, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and sometimes at midday it's closed. It's a busy place. There's no reason why it can't be open on Saturday till 4 o'clock in the evening. And where you have the markets and so on, sometimes people go to market. You have a catchment population. And if you're interested, in screening and helping people screen for diabetes and hypertension and so on, these are opportunities that you must not lose. You must not, let go by. Mr. Deputy Speaker,
Honourable Member, at this time, your initial speaking time has elapsed. You have an additional 15 minutes. You care to avail yourself?
Thank you.
Proceed.
So thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I just wanted to, again, I want to look at this issue of so many unemployed doctors and, and suggest some ways that these doctors can be engaged in the system. And one way that they can be engaged is to allow them to work in primary care facilities, to have them work in the health centers. That's one way. It may require some change in terms of the terms and conditions under which they work. You might want to consider giving them some sort of rural allowance and so on. And I say that because there is an article where the minister had to make the point about house doctors who refuse jobs will have to repay gate. That's not really a good situation where the state has funded doctors and so on. You have to give them and provide every opportunity for them to be able to work in the system. And if it means that you have to change things a little bit, then so be it, but you get them out there to work. So the special incentives, and I spoke already about, you could actually use the 6-month mandatory elective in the community as part of that, if you expanded the internship program. So it's something that the minister may want to consider. Now, the other idea that I want to throw out, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is with regards to engaging these doctors in something what I would want to call a medical call center. For want of a better term, I mean, we can develop on whatever it is, but the idea was to give general and broad advice, by modern communication means the phone, WhatsApp, and so on, and you can have doctors there, you can have patients able to call in, discuss problems, and that may actually decrease the amount of visits that you might have to an accident and emergency department or a health center, just by the problem being solved on the phone. Of course, there'll be certain ways you'll have to do it and procedures and so on. The other idea I wanted to throw out is with regards to, again, making things like blood pressure machines and glucometers, the ones for checking your sugar, available at a very subsidized cost to members of the population, so they have access to this. And I did mention before that it might be a good idea, as we're talking about primary health and and so on, it may be a good idea to look at providing incentives for those who pay gym fees, for example. You can look at giving them a rebate or a substantial rebate, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more people going to the gyms. Of course, we want to improve the parks and so on. I'm sure that you have many parks that in your constituency, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But for those who don't, they have to use the gyms and so on. And that kind of incentive will be good for them. The other issue, before I leave the issue of primary health care, is with regards to the current problem we have, or the potential problems we have with regards to the Venezuelan migrants. And, as I was driving up to the parliament this morning, I was thinking, we have the Cuban doctors who speak Spanish, we are going, whether we like it or not, we are going to have Venezuelans accessing our health facilities. There's going to be a language barrier. So why don't we give consideration for the proper deployment of these Cuban doctors in every accident and emergency department and in the health centers? It's something that's going to make the communication easier, and there'll be less confusion, less risk of misdiagnosis, and it's something that the government may want to consider. So I just put that suggestion forward as a way of easing the transition of those who, from Venezuela, the same language, Spanish and so on, in terms of accessing our facilities. I just wanted to throw that out, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, the issue of overcrowding is dealt with in the third limb of this motion. My colleague from Caronese has gone into quite a bit of detail in terms of the overcrowding. I just wanted to mention certain issues that continue to contribute to the overcrowding. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you'll permit me just to read from a report that was sent to me by someone who works at San Fernando, who has tremendous experience and so on. I'm not at liberty to quote, but this is information that arrived in my mailbox. And it spoke about the overcrowding and the unavailability of the beds and so on. And part of the problem there is that it's like a hotel system. For you to get a bed in the hotel, somebody has to leave the room. And for that somebody to leave the room in a hospital, they have to be treated in a timely manner. So it's a whole chain reaction that backs up, where if you have to wait on diagnostics, if you have to wait on a CT scan or an MRI, an ultrasound, or a blood test, that can delay, it can keep you. Sometimes you spend a day or two waiting. And the other thing, of course, is that if the drugs are not easily available for your treatment, it takes longer to treat you. And therefore, it creates a problem. It creates a backup. And this is one of the issues that creates the problem as far as the unavailability of beds and so on is concerned. Now, the waiting time, the fourth limb of this motion speaks to whereas the waiting time for surgery is highly unacceptable and there is non-functional diagnostic equipment, I just want to ask the question as to whether the external patient program that was started in 2014 under the People's Partnership Government, whether that is still functioning. That was an initiative that was started by the previous Minister of Health, and the aim of that initiative was to ensure that we had set a standard that those who were waiting for more than 3 months for any diagnostic procedure and some treatment procedures would access that program, and they would not have been, my time is very short, remember we talk after, but would access that program and be able to utilize that program. So the question I ask is whether that program is still available. And I also want to ask, because there are many patients who come to my constituency office, and I'm sure to all of the members' constituency offices, and they are on a waiting list for cardiac surgery. Some of them are on a waiting list for renal dialysis, and the time is long. And it is very unfortunate, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that some of these patients actually die from their problems before they can access treatment, and that is totally unacceptable in a society like ours. So I make a plea for those patients who are on the waiting list for cardiac surgery, for angiograms, for stenting, and so on, that these can be expedited, that there should be some procedure in place that will ensure that these patients are treated properly. On the issue of the waiting list for surgery as well, there's also another issue with regards to the provision of surgery for those patients awaiting gynecological cancer. And I know my colleague for Caronese would have mentioned that, but there's also a problem in terms of the arrangement of what we call the gynecological cancer services, where you have a long waiting time. And if that happens, it means that by the time the patient is treated, the cancer could have spread, and it costs besides increasing the morbidity to the person and so on, it will cost the state more in the long run to provide chemotherapy and other modalities of treatment. Yeah. So that is something that, and the patient can die, of course, yeah. So that is something that needs to be addressed in a more definitive manner, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I just draw the attention to the Minister that there is a particular contract for one of the gynecological oncologists at Mount Hope. I don't want to call any names, but that perhaps need to be examined in terms of seeing whether more surgeries could be gotten out of that contract. It's just something came to my attention, and I trust that the minister will look into that. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, again, I'm moving through the clauses of these motions quickly. And clause 6, I think, is very important, and it speaks to whereas the closure of the central block of the Port of Spain General Hospital, the underutilization of the Couva Hospital, and so on, have deprived patients of care. And if you'll allow me, Mr. Deputy Speaker, just to speak briefly about the Couva Hospital. And, you know, this thing about the hospital was opened on August 14th and closed on August 14th, we have to go beyond that, and we have to go beyond the construction site thing. I just want to make the point that when that hospital was opened for commissioning in August, there was a plan of action in place that spoke to the next 6 months, and if that plan was followed and not scuttled by the present government, that hospital would be open and patients would have been served at the hospital. I just want to clear that for the public to understand. You know, and I have many documents here, which I will not have the time to go into, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that speaks to the exact plan and provides details. And in fact, the commissioning manager got so frustrated that the person, you know, had to resign and left the country and went to greener pastures in the UK and so on, because under the present government, it was just taking too long to complete that commissioning process and get the hospital running. So it's a great tragedy, you know, that it's taken 4 years for this hospital to be utilized. And I look forward to next week, you know. I look forward to next week. I'm not holding my breath. I'm sure we are not holding our breath on this side. We are hoping for the population that will open next week, is July. We're really hoping that we'll see something happening. And I trust that it will happen. Yeah, well, my colleague is saying the grass will be cut, but I'm hoping that we'll actually see patients, you know, going into that hospital. And as I talk about that hospital, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to make one point. You know, it is sad when a hospital is built in a certain way. And the minister spoke recently in this parliament about creating a center of excellence. That's fine. But in his contribution, he said nothing about treating children in that hospital. And I want the population to know that there are two towers in that hospital. One is an adult tower for 150 beds, and the other is a pediatric tower for 80 beds. It was designed that way, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And if it is that you're not going to provide children's services, it means you have a tower that has 80 beds that you're now going to have to reconfigure it. But more than that, Deputy Speaker, I want to make the point that this is the only hospital in Trinidad, and perhaps one of the few in the Caribbean, that has a purpose-built pediatric emergency entrance. That is an important point. It was designed that way, because when children go to a general accident and emergency department, sometimes there is a process to filter them, but sometimes they don't get the attention that they deserve, and they can be neglected whilst waiting and lost amongst the adults and so on in the accident and emergency. So again, I trust and hope that the government will revisit and look at exactly how that facility is going to be utilized. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the short time I have left, I just wanted to raise the issue.
You have 2 more minutes, member.
Oh, all right, I just wanted to raise the issue of the plight of the Petrin workers. I say that because I had a meeting in my constituency last night, not for this purpose, but for some other reasons. And you know, it was sad for me to see that those workers have been left out in the dark with regards to their pension plans, and now they have access to they don't have access to health care. I want to tie this in.
Oh yeah, I was now going to say, yeah, you know, to tie it in the relevance.
Yeah, I just want to tie it into the fact that the Augustus Long Hospital has been closed down, and that we have one less facility with 50 beds less in the system that needs definitely needs beds. And also to ask a question that whether the equipment at this particular Augustus Long Hospital is being looked after, because we have seen recently in the news where equipment at other facilities have been lost and stolen and so on. So I draw that to the government's attention. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I close, I just want to say that I want to encourage the Minister of Health and the government to build on the bridges that were created and left by the People's Partnership government. I want to say that let us put the right people in the right places. My colleague spoke about mismanagement and poor management in the health, in the RHAs and so on. Put back the proper systems and ensure accountability, and and to tell the minister to do what he did with the maternal health platform, with the other initiatives that are there for him. So, and to do the right thing with the Couva Hospital, and to do it now. So with those few words, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to say that I fully support the motion brought by my colleague, and thank you very much.
I recognize the member for St. Anne's West. Oh, St. Anne's East. My apologies.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is indeed an honor to be able to rise and to contribute in this debate. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think the first thing I need to do on behalf of the constituents of St. Anne's East is to congratulate our Member of Parliament for St. Joseph, the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health seems to be a favorite of the opposition, of those oppositors, and they keep bringing up issues, and I want to thank him for his management of the health sector, and I also want to thank him for his education, because every time he stands to present in the Parliament, he gives us details, figures, statistics, which really help to underscore how well he has been doing in terms of management of the health sector, and that is something that is very important to us all. And so, on behalf of my constituents, I want to thank him for what he is doing. Mr. Deputy Speaker, public health care is something important to everyone in this country. And it should be noted, and I think when we put motions like this, when I look through the motion, I want to underscore the point that public health care is free to everyone in Trinidad and Tobago. And sometimes, because we are so accustomed to it, we lose sight of that fact that we live in a country where health care is free. That is something that is not widespread, and we should be grateful for that privilege in this country, Trinidad and Tobago. Every year, billions are allocated to ensuring that our citizens are well taken care of, that health care can be afforded by everyone in this country. We have over 120 health facilities, different ones. We have public hospitals, we have private hospitals, district health facilities, and of course, public health centers. Over 120, situated all over this country. No matter where you go, you can find a health center at which our public can be seen and taken care of. This is no mean feat, and this is something we should be proud of in Trinidad and Tobago. When we look at this motion, look at the way it is phrased, when you look at the wording and the phraseology, you would expect or believe that all of this did not exist in this country. You would not believe that in over 120 facilities every single day, people are being seen, taken care of, children are being seen, dental is being provided, surgeries are taking place. You would not believe that all of this is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Indeed, if you look at how it is phrased, and you considered even the manner of the member for Caroni East when he presented, it was as though the sky has fallen in Trinidad and Tobago. Nobody can get health care. Everybody is being excluded from being taken care of. You would believe that is our situation. You would not believe that there are thousands of people every single day in this country, even citizens who are not from this country, benefiting from what our taxpayers' dollars are allocated. And over the years, we have spent billions, and we continue to do it to ensure that our citizens have access to proper health care. And what is notable, Mr. Deputy Speaker, notable and really not acceptable is the fact that the member from Caroni East stood up very emotionally and threw things out there without any statistics, in a stark contrast to the presentation from our Minister of Health, where he was able to debunk them with the use of facts and data and information, and that is important. You see, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is easy to stand up and to point out the things that may have gone wrong. But when we consider how many people are being seen every day and treated successfully, and then we consider the couple of cases that will take place as in any normal circumstance where things will go wrong, then we get to understand that it is very easy to be alarmist, very easy to stand here and say everything is falling down, nothing is working, everything has gone wrong. And this is something that we have to guard against, because as parliamentarians, we wear the term honorable, and we have a duty to our population to ensure that what we present is the correct and true facts of the matter. And when you stand without information and just throw out things, all the negatives, you just bring them up and you repeat them like a mantra, is it that you are trying to scare the population into believing that things are worse than they really are? And this is something that I really want to indicate that it is not acceptable in our parliament to stand and use this honorable house for that purpose. We have to present facts, data, information to ensure that what is sent out there to those who are looking at us, listening to us on the radio, on the TV, and many people look at us and listen to us. And we have a responsibility to ensure that what we put out there represents the truth of the matter. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member spoke about public education and the fact that that is not available. And when one would have listened to the member for St. Joseph, our Minister of Health, and he spoke about all of the pap smear campaigns and so that we've been having, and all of the different things they've been using to reach out to the population to ensure that they understand and take control of their health, it paints such a different picture from what was happening before. And I want to take the opportunity now, because sometimes when we put things out there, it invalidates people. But I want to say to all of the doctors and nurses doing their best in those more than 120 health institutions all around this country, I want to say to them that we are very happy and proud of the work you do, and we know that you go the extra mile to provide proper health care to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I want to validate them, because I can get the impression that just looking at a motion phrase like this, they could feel disenchanted, they could feel undervalued, and they could feel as though nobody is recognizing their service to this country. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to indicate something to you. And this is a reason, again, why I want to really say that we must not present circumstances that are not the truth. All over the country, people are going through all types of different health challenges available in our public system for free. Our services such as hysterectomies, tubal ligations, tumor removals, cancer treatment, heart surgeries, all of these, cataracts, all of these services available for free to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, as you regain the chair, I want to say this, that it is important people understand the value of what we are getting in Trinidad and Tobago. I had 3 children in our public healthcare system, 3. And I want to commend the doctors again and the nurses who take care of us. I was a patient at the healthcare facility in my area, the San Juan Clinic. I went there, the type of care and interest taken in you by the healthcare professionals stationed there is really above par. And I want to congratulate them again and again to say that we must not undervalue their service, and we must not take for granted what we have here in Trinidad and Tobago, and we must not cry wolf, and we must not say the sky is falling when in fact it is not doing so. We have good health care in Trinidad and Tobago. I want to draw the attention of the Parliament to the fact that I taught at Custard for 6 years. And I see mentioned here the hundreds of nationals denied employment as nurses and doctors. And over the years I taught at Custard, I would have taught hundreds of nurses passing through the system. And what is interesting is that every time I have the opportunity to go to a hospital or go to a health facility, I see these nurses here represented working very proudly in their uniforms. They were students and they are now employed. So I wonder, where does this hundreds of nationals who were denied employment as nurses and doctors, where does that come from? Again, throwing out data there, throwing out things that shouldn't even call it data, throwing out information there that really cannot be validated and called fact. And it falls again to our member for St. Joseph, our Minister of Health, to correct that. So I want to urge all the citizens who may have been looking on, I hope that after the presentation from Caroni East, they would have stayed to listen to the statistics, the important and factual information presented by the member for St. Joseph, because that will be important in understanding what the true situation is. Because just on the basis of that inflammatory presentation, you may believe that the situation is different from what it really is. I look at the issue of the drug shortage mentioned by the member, and they can't get this drug and they can't get that drug. And Madam Speaker, it reminds me very much of the pattern of sabotage we saw happening with the Tobago ferries. It reminds me very much of the pattern of sabotage I saw happening with the Brian Lara Stadium. And I wonder, I just wonder, how come the member is so accurate with what is missing and what is not missing? I just wonder what information the member has that's coming back to him. And I wonder, you know, the members mentioned snakes at one of the facilities, and I just wonder if the member is intimately involved with maybe some two-legged snakes that may be in the system and maybe contributing to what we call all of those missing things, and there's equipment that goes missing, all of these things. And I wonder if the pattern of sabotage is continuing to ensure that there is something to speak about when you're speaking about things not happening and drugs missing and that kind of thing. Madam Speaker, I want to also suggest that it is very easy to look at the newspaper and pick out the things that are highlighted there as wrong, things that have not went well in the healthcare system. That is very easy to do. But no one sees the thousands of things that go right, the people who are treated well. And I want to suggest that it is very, very possible that the members' interaction with the grassroots people who access these services every day and are treated, I want to suggest that might be limited. And if it is so, it means that the member is not aware of the thousands of positive cases, but only aware of the one or two that show up in the media where things may have gone wrong or a negative result may have come out. And so I want to suggest to the member that certainly some of us are more in touch with the grassroots people who have no choice but to use the system. And so we know that the system is working. We know that people are visiting these health facilities and being treated well. We understand that these people are very grateful to a government that ensures that in times of difficulty, we still have billions being allocated to ensure that they have access to all of the treatments that make their quality of life better and ensure that in Trinidad and Tobago, we can be a beacon in the region and the world for good healthcare services to all of our citizens across the board. Madam Speaker, this has been contrasted before, but I want to make sure that we understand very clearly. We had a problem at the Central Block. We have a problem at the Central Block, a problem known for years. And in the face of that problem, at the major hospital in our country, resources that could have been allocated to fix that problem were instead allocated to build a children's facility, as it was termed at the time, when one was not needed, because we have the children's facility operating and can have increased capacity at Mount Hope. However, instead of allocating resources to fix the major hospital in the country, that is how the resources were spent. And yet still, we are being told that we place no priority on health, that we are not looking at the things that are wrong in the system. And I wonder, how could that be? Because it is clear as day that when resources could have been put by the members opposite, when they had the opportunity to do so, to take care of the major hospital, they used it in a different way and have been beating for 4 years, beating themselves all over the head and going about the place saying that we have not opened that and we are putting people at risk. So no one was at risk in the Port of Spain hospital when the central block needed to be fixed. It fell to this government, this Minister of Health, this Prime Minister to understand the problem there and to put it as a priority, because the People's National Movement always put people first. It's in our name, it's in our DNA. The first word of our name is people, and we always put people first. And so we have made it our priority to ensure that the central block of the Port of Spain Hospital, our primary healthcare facility in the country, is taken care of. And not only have we done that, but we have also taken steps to ensure that the Couva Health Facility is now going to be open and used for a purpose that will be redound to the benefit of all of the citizens in the country. So we haven't sacrificed one for the other, as the other side did when they had the opportunity, but we have ensured that all feel the benefit of the government's resources, because that's what the People's National Movement does. Madam Speaker, all of the reductions in the CDAP wastage, all of the reductions in the infant mortality rate, the existence of a strategic plan for the health center, all of these things have been ignored by the member for Caroni East as he presents the situation as though the sky has fallen in the healthcare sector and no one can get care. He is here in the Parliament using this facility, this honorable house, to crow from the hilltops at every single incident adds up now to the fact that we don't have a proper functioning healthcare system. I want to draw members' attention to the fact that in the United States, where people look to as a more developed system, and many times they quote statistics from there, in the United States, there are 17,000 malpractice cases in 1 year. 17,000. And so I want members to understand, and the viewing public as well, that we don't live in a perfect world. There will always be, no matter how well you prepare, no matter how well you manage a system, there will always be times when things go wrong. And in healthcare, even more so. And so to stand and to use all of the things that would have made it into the media to make it appear as though everything has fallen down is really so disingenuous, because it again presents to the public and undermines the confidence of the public of Trinidad and Tobago in their services, their institutions, in what they are spending their taxpayers' money on. And I want the public to understand that if in the US, which is a developed country, and we look to it, there can be 17,000 cases per year, then what do we expect in Trinidad and Tobago? And I can assure that we don't have 17,000 cases per year of things that go wrong here. There will be one or two, but that does not mean that our healthcare system has collapsed and there's nothing going on and our citizens cannot get good care. The hundreds of thousands of citizens who visit our hospitals and our primary healthcare facilities every week can attest to the fact that our government is providing a service of which we should all be proud. And we should not be coming here bringing things phrased like this to undermine the confidence of our citizens in what we are able to provide for ourselves. We should be proud of what is happening in our country. So, Madam Speaker, again, I just want to look at the phrasing of this. And I want to categorically state how proud we on this side are of the performance of our Minister of Health under the guidance and tutelage of our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, who always places the people first and the care of our people as primary focus in our country. I want to reiterate that we on this side reject this motion out of hand because our healthcare system, far from being in collapse, is in a state of growth and progress, and we congratulate the member and congratulate our country for ensuring that we provide this service to us, our citizens, and to those who visit our shores to take advantage of what we have in this country. We in this country need to be proud and grateful for what is provided to us instead of dragging ourselves down as this motion seeks to do. And Madam Speaker, before I close, I want to mention something with regard to the chronic diseases. And I want to make a plug, as the Minister of Health often does, that we need to take control of our own situations and our health. And I want to say this for all of us because it's important, because we represent people. And they come to us with different issues, different ailments. And I want to say that our healthcare system would not be so overloaded at times if we took better care of ourselves and responsibility. Our health is the responsibility of us all, because when we end up in the healthcare system, it means all of us are paying for maybe the bad choices that some of us may make. And so I want to make a plug as I close for us to ensure that we take our health into our own hands. We educate ourselves. We use resources provided by the Ministry of Health and other places to check our health, keep ourselves on top of things. And in that way, we will not rely so much on what our healthcare system can provide, and we'll be able to do even more for those who really require the services of our healthcare system in Trinidad and Tobago. So, Madam Speaker, we reject this motion out of hand. We congratulate our Minister of Health, and we congratulate the People's National Movement for again placing the people first in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Oroku.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I proceed here, I would like to congratulate the member for Caroni East and the member for Faizabad for a clinical contribution here today. It was really a surgical cut, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when I listened to the member for St. Joseph,
I think we had to put you in ICU.
The member said that the member for Caroni East did not come here with facts and figures. He gave anecdotal evidence not backed up with data, laced with innuendos. And most importantly, he said the member perhaps was suffering from amnesia, loss of memory, which is retrograde amnesia. Madam Speaker, I want to remind the honorable member and my friend, member for St. Joseph, that there is something called cognitive dissonance. And it's a common phenomenon used in psychology. When we have a conflict with our own beliefs, when we have a conflict with our own perceived notion, when we have a conflict of how we rationalize what we see. So I will leave that for the honorable member to just have a little short thought of what I meant by cognitive dissonance. First, Madam Speaker, the honorable member spoke about the central block. And I want to remind this minister that every time he comes to this parliament, he speaks about the central block. And you know, they beat their chests like Tarzan, hit up their chest, that the People's Partnership didn't do anything about the central block. Madam Speaker, during the People's Partnership regime, the honorable minister may be able to check his records, because the People's Partnership had what was called a master plan. And it was to rebuild or build a new hospital in Port-of-Spain. It was not for a piece of a hospital. It was a master plan. In fact, Madam Speaker, there were already discussions held with Johns Hopkins Hospital. Already commenced. There were discussions and ongoing reviews with the Johns Hopkins Hospital and the People's Partnership government.
Plans were being drawn up.
And there were, as the member for Caroni East said, there were already plans in place. There was also a $200 million allocation with a joint venture with Johns Hopkins to train local health personnel across the board in managing, Madam Speaker, health issues, especially chronic non-communicable diseases. So I want to put that on record, that this must stop, and the minister must not continue to speak about the Central Block and the People's Partnership ignored the Port-of-Spain Hospital.
Very good. Very good.
Madam Speaker, in fact, what the plan was with the master plan was also in San Fernando, between the building, the main structure, the main San Fernando hospital, there was empty spaces, and they were also going to construct buildings there to accommodate the increased patients that go through and pass through San Fernando Hospital. So that is with the Central Block that I want to really denounce what the member for St. Joseph has said. The other thing the member for St. Joseph said is that drugs, that he was perhaps had some ailment and went to the hospital and could not get what is called the original drug. He got a generic drug. And that is the same thing that the senior consultants are reporting on, Madam Speaker, with patients. Because when the senior consultants send patients to the health centers for prescribed drugs, they receive only 2 out of the 6 recommended drugs or prescribed drugs. And that is in most cases. And what the doctors are saying, the senior consultants, they are saying as a result of the drug shortages, there are no brand name drugs, but generic drugs. Under the People's Partnership, original drugs were bought.
And they're more efficacious.
And what happened is that they were more effective. And because these patients get cheap generic drugs, which this government is buying by the bulk, it's not effective, and patients keep coming to the hospital and they have to be readmitted. And this increases the overcrowding problem. Yeah. So if you were to purchase the original drugs for the patients, the brand name drugs, then you could decrease this problem. And if I will tell you about chronic renal failure, Madam Speaker, every month in Trinidad and Tobago, there are 12 new patients that need dialysis, 12 new patients. And out of those 12, you may have 2 that may die. So in effect, you have 10 new patients added to the dialysis list. These patients, what is surprising, Madam Speaker, is that these patients will remain warded, occupying a bed for 2 to 3 weeks. And why they're occupying this bed for 2 to 3 weeks, Madam Speaker, is because they are waiting approval from the minister or the ministry to give a referral to do this dialysis. So while this patient is waiting there for 3 weeks, suffering, you cannot discharge the patient because you have to wait on the approval. You have both the patient and both the family suffering. Because, Madam Speaker, when you do get the dialysis, what happens is that the situation doesn't improve because some of the drugs needed to improve the health of the patient are not available at the hospital. So you have millions of dollars being spent doing dialysis, but you don't provide the life-saving drug known as the human erythropoietin, which is called EPREX. And I'm sure the Honorable Minister knows what is EPREX because he's a pharmacist. It doesn't matter how long it took for him to become a pharmacist, but eventually he became one. So you see, Madam Speaker, if you have chronic renal failure under this administration, Madam Speaker, you are in prolonged suffering in this country. Prolonged suffering. Let us see about some of the blood tests, Madam Speaker, under this administration. Because every single day, you have patients paying for blood tests in private institutions. At private institutions, that never happened under People's Partnership government. Never happened. Because the money that these patients have, Madam Speaker, some of them have to use this money to buy food for their children. They have to go now, dig in their pockets to go and pay for tests that's supposed to be done at the hospital. And as of today, Madam Speaker, you cannot get what is called a serum calcium test. You cannot get tests for thyroid function. You cannot get tests for tumor markers. And when we talk about tumor markers, Madam Speaker, we're talking about cancer patients. We have reagents. Still, the reagents, the suppliers are refusing to provide more and more reagents because they're not being paid. And these are problems which this government, how is this government going to deal with this, what is called mismanagement, and how to keep and to deal with inventory, Madam Speaker? In fact, we have a Newsday article where even the minister himself, Madam Speaker, was unable to get his drugs when he went to the hospital. We have an article here. He was discharged from the hospital, and here, what somebody said here, Anna Ramdas, the news reporter, she said, Health Minister, and I quote, Madam Speaker, I crave your indulgence to read this. Health Minister Terrence Deyalsingh got a taste of what much of the population has been experiencing with a shortage of drugs at the hospitals, as some of the medication he was prescribed were not available. And this is News Daily Express, Friday, 15 July, 2016. And as the minister said, that is totally false. On the 25th of December, 2018, the minister spoke to the media, and he said, and I quote, "Many times patients come to you with a story that is not factually based, and you all run with it without getting the facts." So he buffed the media. So today, Mr. Minister, I have the facts, and I'm getting it right. Because I want the Honorable Minister to deny the fact that overcrowding is not a problem in the hospital. I want him to deny the fact that there's not a shortage of drugs. I want you to deny the fact that you don't have reagents and patients have to pay for blood tests.
Sad state of affairs.
That is what we are experiencing under a PNM administration.
Minister Deyalsingh.
And Madam Speaker, the member for Caroni East spoke about overcrowding. He went at some length. But I just want to add to it, Madam Speaker, and I am talking about only 2 days ago, which is Wednesday, the 26th of June, 2 days ago. There were 50 patients waiting in the emergency department at the San Fernando General Hospital for beds. 50 patients, and I'm not talking about last year or 2017. I'm talking about 2 days ago. Long lines, trolleys, waiting from one end of the corridor to the next.
Benches.
People sleeping on chairs. In fact, Madam Speaker, corridors are lined with patients, people lying on gurneys. And what we have in San Fernando General Hospital, we ought to have what is called a bed management bureau. But that has collapsed. It has become dysfunctional. And as I say, how is it that we are going to deal with all these inefficiencies, and the member for St. Anne's East is saying that everything is working, and why it is that on this side, coming to blame the PNM and say nobody's getting drugs, nobody is getting. You see, Madam Speaker, as members of Parliament, you could fly out and go. You're not experiencing the torture and the trauma that the poor man has to undergo in this country. We have a report here, Madam Speaker, November 28, 2018, where there were reports of chaotic conditions, both at Port of Spain and San Fernando General Hospitals. San Fernando General Hospital's filled to capacity, and staff have been placing patients in hallways. Patients are also said to have been left to wait without beds and without medical treatment. And the head of the Nurses Association said, conditions at San Fernando General Hospital have been worsening for some time. That is under this Minister of Health, Madam Speaker. And when we talk about drugs, we also have to deal with cancer, Madam Speaker, because cancer is the #1 cause of death amongst women, and is the second leading cause of death amongst men in Trinidad and Tobago. Approximately 1,200 patients die annually from cancer.
Member for Urupuch West. Honorable members, it's now 4:30. But before we take the suspension, I crave your indulgence just to inform you that up to this time, the personal explanation from the member for Urupuch East is still outstanding. Honorable members, I expected that at this time, I would have been calling upon the honorable member for Urupuch East to deal with the item which was deferred based on a clear signal which she displayed earlier in the sitting. Regrettably, I am unable to do so, as I have observed the absence of the honorable member from this chamber for some time now. I am further to inform that approximately 1 hour ago, I received a letter from the whip, which reads as follows. 28th of June, 2019, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Tower D, Level G to 8, Port of Spain International Waterfront Center, 1A Wrightson Road, Port of Spain, Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Dear Honorable Speaker, personal explanation from the member of Urupuch East. I am writing you as it pertains to the personal explanation that is expected to be delivered by the member of Parliament for Urupuch East. Upon discussion with the member of Parliament for Urupuch East, the member, in accordance with the letter dated June 26, 2019, which stated, inverted commas, resolved that this House do not call upon the member of Urupuch East to apologize to this House and the member for Laventille West at the next sitting of the House by way of personal explanation, quote, close inverted commas, was prepared to offer the required explanation at today's parliamentary sitting. However, given the wording of the letter's content, the member of Parliament for Urupuch East was not fully aware of the necessary procedure which required him to seek your leave via a written submission. After guidance from the Clerk of the House, as well as review of, I quote, order of business in the House of Commons, end of quote manual, the member has come to a full appreciation that the content of any personal statement must be submitted to the Speaker for the required leave to be granted. Given the significant issues of this matter before the House, as well as the time constraint of 10 minutes for such statement as laid out in the standing orders, the member must now ensure all the relevant information that best explains the situation before the House is carefully examined and placed within the content of his written submission. However, all of this information is at his constituency office in Urupuch East. In light of the present weather conditions and traffic gridlock that occurs at this hour, the member is of the view that he would not be able to effectively compile, I thought it was comply, but it is compile, this statement and deliver to you in a timely manner. The member has therefore given an undertaking to follow all required procedures dictated by our standing orders and submit this required statement for leave to be granted at the next parliamentary sitting. Yours sincerely, David A. Lee, Opposition Chief Whip, Member of Parliament for Point of Pale. Now, honorable members, in the circumstances and events of earlier today, I must express that this letter of the whip appears somewhat curious, as all members of this House know that to make a personal explanation, the text must be submitted to the Speaker in order to seek leave. However, honorable members, given that this matter pertains to a decision of this House, pursuant to the powers of this House, and specifically in the context of Standing Order 5516, I'm obliged to seek your leave. Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is with some shock that I also received the letter, a copy of that letter, from the Chief Whip, the Member of Parliament for Point of Pale. Madam Speaker, the member for Urupuch East was a former leader of the House. The member for Urupuch East was a former Chief Whip until he was replaced by the MP for Chaguanas West and then the MP for Point of Pale. Madam Speaker, the member for Urupuch East told us that he has been a member for over 18 years. Madam Speaker, that same member told us that he participated in ensuring that we had these new standing orders. Madam Speaker, this is not the first time that any member of this House has had to do a personal explanation. Madam Speaker, on each occasion, that person, that member who had to do a personal explanation, knew full well that the standing orders required that such an explanation must be sent to the Speaker first. Madam Speaker, that is how we do business in this House. Madam Speaker, the member for Urupuch East is a seasoned member of this House. Madam Speaker, I posit that he knows better, but perhaps, Madam Speaker, he cannot do better. Madam Speaker, we on this side find it quite ludicrous that the member requires information lodged at his constituency office in order to write an apology. Madam Speaker, we are therefore inclined to wonder whether the member isn't attempting to frustrate the will of this august House. Madam Speaker, we on this side are left to wonder whether the member is treating this House with contempt, even as he has been asked to apologize. And Madam Speaker, we are on this side are wondering if the member is continuing to attempt to bring us all into odium. Madam Speaker, This House, however, will not let its dignity be compromised. Madam Speaker, the member knows better. He knows that personal explanations must be given at the approved time. And Madam Speaker, personal explanations come high up in the agenda because they are to be done in the full view of the Parliament and in the full view of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, we on this side will not allow the member to disrespect this House or the people of Trinidad and Tobago. However, Madam Speaker, we on this side are of the firm view that an apology could have been 3 words: I am sorry. Madam Speaker, we do hope that the member understands that any failure on his part to tender the apologies required pursuant to the will of this House at the very next sitting of this House will be treated as an act of gross contempt of this House, and it will not be tolerated. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
This House is now suspended. We shall resume at 5:15.